Yo, hello, hello, hello. It's been some time since we did just a chill stream, but I'm like, I've been telling myself, it's time to do some stream recommitment again. So here we are. Sorry for the strange audio. I was testing stuff, which I should have done like off stream, but I did it here. My apologies. My apologies. My apologies. As you can see, the background is very blurry. Gonna play some honkai today. Gonna try to do this these events that I've been missing out on. Let's try to get it all done. In which case, let's turn this up just a bit. I'm like woefully behind on so many events. I don't know how many days I even have left. Well, let's do my dailies first before that one. Anyway, I've been thinking for a while now that I'm like, I kind of want to like watch anime while I'm streaming, just do react streams, and I've been trying to figure out how to do it. I think the very, very low-tech option that I'm going to take is I am going to stream in my Discord the video and like me streaming. And did I already submit this? Yeah, be in my Discord and like stream there if you want to like actually watch the video with me. And then it'll be muted on the stream. Okay, is that enough for this? The pass? 9 days left of this event. I wonder if that's enough time for me to do everything that I need to. Because let's do Make a Wish Fest first. Actually, before we do this, let's just get Elysian Realm out of the way. Then I don't have to think about it for the rest of the week. We'll just run Durandal twice, baby. We don't have to think.
准备好迎接胜利了吗？
Auto attack style.
我们出发。准备好迎接胜利了吗？即刻启程，相信我们，寻梦者。到我了，别挡道。
Now all we do is we. Does it only generate it if I'm moving around? Let's gauge the buffs.
我们出。准备好迎接胜利了吗？我们出发，相信我们，寻梦者。到我了，别挡道。每一次努力都会让这个世界有所不同。
This is so dumb. in like a good way, I think.
即刻启程。
In a way that I'm very happy. You know?
准备好迎接胜利了吗？我们出发，相信我们，寻梦者。交给我。小意思。
Now all I do is yay. Restriction buffs. Not doing anything. Wasn't moving. More due to go burr. For real though, like. I'm just gonna run this twice, then we don't have to think. Like, I feel like even Kiana requires like a little bit of whatever, but this one I can like not think. Anyway, I was saying earlier that today I'm gonna actually be doing the events that I've been procrastinating. Increase move speed. All right, even faster. I'm gonna do the events that I need to do. I was also trying to test streaming anime, but that'll probably happen when I'm getting a little bored. We're just gonna try to bust out this rice cake event all in one go. At least the story. I can never tell what actually counts as an entity. Or, like...
准备好迎接胜利了吗？即刻启程，相信我们，寻梦者。瞧我的！别哪里跑？解决完问题后，去吃点什么吧。
I mean, it doesn't seem like she's summoning any entities, going by the fact that the Mobius symbol disappeared.
每一次努力，都会让这个世界有所不同。身体虽然变小，行动更加灵活。
Thanks to Randall.
准备好迎接胜利了吗？即刻启程，差不远。准备好迎接胜利了吗？即刻启程，相信我们，寻梦者。交给我，别了，小意思。
So I was driving around a little bit earlier, and I was just listening to the Part 2 soundtracks again, and, you know, brings back all the memories of the story so far. In some ways, like, has all that much happened? I can't really say for sure. I mean, yes, a lot of stuff has happened, but I'm like, I feel like there's so much more in this story to go.
准备好迎接胜利了吗？即刻启程，相信我们，寻梦者。瞧我的！别了，哪里跑？似乎有可疑的声音，保持警惕。 我们出发。
This Remo arc has been going on for maybe a little too long. It's like the story itself isn't taking that much time, but I'm like, calendar-wise, I'm like, I think it's about time we get out of here. I think we have like this one more chapter. I hope that's when we get our animation. Bodhi. But I think they need to reveal the next stage. The next phase of this story. Like, we've been in this Tenchu War plotline just way too long now. Since like 5, 6, 7, 3, 4, like 5 updates. It's gonna be like 6, really. Like 6 updates for a story arc is pretty crazy. Like the longest one we had since then was like 31 EX, 32, 33, 34, 35, which is 5 chapters. Like that was 5 updates to get through finality. Like this is 6. We're
准备好迎接胜利了吗？相信我们，寻梦者。瞧我的！别了，哪里跑？每一次努力都。 我们出发。
don't know if Eden 1 was the right choice there. Just we don't really recover
准备好迎
SP,
接胜
do
利
we?
了吗？我们出发
Or
了，
use
相信我
SP?
们，寻梦者。到我了，别挡道！
Look how fast that astral ring meter is going up. Wow, I feel like that run went faster than the last one.
都会让这个世界有所不同。
How do you feel about Amphoris then? Given the
行
updates,
动更加灵活。
hold up, it's gotta cut off on my screen. Given the updates are pretty long, and there will be 8 in total, 3.0 to 3.7. I mean, I feel like Amphoris is like way too long. Well, here's my thing. Like the this Ruimu arc actually isn't really long time-wise. Like, hold up, let me pull up my chart real quick. Where is this? Honkai times. I don't think I've updated this for the new chapter yet, but the new chapter is roughly about 4 hours, I think, until the long road leads to the clear sky. So if we count everything from 5 to 8, it's roughly 16 hours. That's actually really not that long, in terms of like gameplay time comparatively. Like getting through the entire Longsho arc was 25 hours. If we count chapter 4 with all of this, that's 19. So in terms of gameplay time, the Ruimu arc is about as long as the last one. And I'm assuming chapter 9 will also be like about 4 hours long or so. So what does that add? So yeah, like 24 hours. It's like the same length actually. So it's making me think that they are planning like around each of these HI3 arcs to be about 25 hours long or so. Thank you for the follow. I truly appreciate it. Yeah. So if Ruimu arc has one more chapter, chapter 9, and it's 4 hours, that'll lead to about 23 hours of story, which yeah is about as long as anything we had before. Because like Salt Snow Holy City was 23 hours. Well, I'm not gonna count Phosphorus arc because that one was cut short. But Phosphorus arc plus the prologue is 17 hours. Finality is roughly 26. So you could say in a lot of ways, like Finality arc took the most amount of time. I do miss these extra long like chapters though, because the extra long chapters really give a lot of space to do whole arcs within like one chapter, you know. And if we think about this Helia arc, which just finished in chapter 8, like that was, so it was like 8 hours. Actually, a little bit longer than that because it counts chapter 6. You get like 10-ish hours of like just Helia stuff, starting from 6 to 8, which is pretty good. I mean, most characters don't really get that much time, and I think they did a good job with it. I haven't really counted for what Amphorius' story is. Like, I think I saw like a tweet that was like Amphorius being 21 hours plus already now, and I do think it's dragging its heels like a lot. The thing is, like, it kind of needs to, because it needs to promote all those characters, right? It's got 12/13 characters that it needs to deal with. /14, because there's also the Herda, which we already knew about, but like Herda's gonna take up some of the screen time because she's there. So like having to deal with that much cast just naturally means it's gonna take a long time. I fell all the way to Agony, bro. Agony 3. I've been I'm gonna say preoccupied. The real word, as we all know, is lazy, but preoccupied. Counter? What is everybody running? But dumb Kiana. Oh, Hong Kong Abyssus 2. We would procrastinate more and just go to the event. Just go to the event, bro. do I get this? Earn 2,000 BP from combat missions. I just need 50 more. You think we'll get APHO 3 in 2026? Asking since APHOs take place every 2 years. Yeah, no, I that's what my assumption is. Because here, I actually made this observation before. So they talked about there being 12 astral rings, right? So if I pull up, this thing. So they talked about there being 12 astral rings. If we think about in year 1, we got 4 rings. And we know that Helia is going to probably bring the next type of ring. This isn't me not like saying any leaks or nothing. I was just like, you know, speculating. Because we know a new ring is coming. Based on like this locked one. On some of these characters. Who else has one? I think Alicia has one. Yeah, so Alicia has this locked ring. Duranda has the locked ring. Kiana has the locked ring, and I think actually I don't know if Kiana has the locked ring. Let's double check. I do not have Badum Kiana. Yeah, Kiana's got the locked ring. I don't know if Sushang has it, but yeah, so like there's a new ring coming and it's probably for Helia, right? And so if we can get 4 more rings in year 2, which is this year, if we get 4 more rings this year, then by like mid 2026 we'll have mid or like maybe like the end. That's like by like the end of 2026 we could possibly have all 12 astral rings, which completes like I guess the Gathering Rings story arc. I mean maybe it won't, like I'm not saying that the part 2 story arc will be done, but it will be like a whole cycle's worth or a whole like I don't know. This like astral ring buildup will be complete in time for APHO 3, and I think the moon ring from APHO obviously has something to do with the astral ring, right? So I'm wondering if the timeline will finally match up in 2026 to have the moon rings added as like further astral ring specializations, you know? It's just a thought. So it's I really don't think it's too far away now. And like once they get APHO 3 done, there's a whole lot of people who are like, oh yeah, story's gonna end when APHO 3 happens. And it's like, I don't really think so, because the storyline of APHO isn't like as like what they've established so far doesn't seem like an end game type of story. Like think about how much bigger the world has gotten since APHO 2. Like APHO 2 introduces like the sky people and stuff, and like it's talking about Kiana being stuck on the moon, you know. But like in that time we didn't really know about like Star Rail. We didn't really know about the Eons, you know. We didn't know the full nature of the cocoon. And to me it almost feels like the threat of the sky people, while like dangerous and a big deal, it's not like an end game type of threat based on like the scaling of all the enemies that we've dealt with in the time since. I think it'll be a big deal to deal with APHO 3 stuff, but I think the storylines will converge in 2026 and it'll just become a part of part 2, you know. They made an effort in part 2 to try to like sync it up with the timeline somewhat already in the beginning. I can't remember if there's like another date marker that we get, but in the chapter where is it? In Tides of Time Gone By, like the data log that we get in the very beginning. So if we go here and we look at where is it? The Hyperion 11 log. So September 22, 2023 was like the date that part 2 was announced, and then these are all dates that they actually made blog posts like in real time in the real world. And February 1st, 2024, the next day after this blog post was made, was the release date of part 2. So they made an effort to try to like say, oh look, everything is happening in real time. And I think part 2 will continue in that way. The only problem is that like the Longcho arc, not the Longcho arc, the Ruimu arc, this Ruimu arc that we're in right now, the Tenchu War, is something it only seemed like they dealt with for about a week, maybe like 2 weeks. They were like doing Ruimu arc stuff for about 2 weeks, and they did chapter 4 in about, I think, 3 or 4 days. And so like I don't think we have a time marker for when it would have happened. If we're going by the timeline, like that should all have been taking place like release date wise in like the summer of 2024 or 2024, last year. And in my opinion, like the entire Longshou arc took like a couple months to deal with, I think. That's just my speculation. That's not like gospel or anything, so don't take that as like canon lore. But my thought is that the Longshou arc took as long to complete as it took to get through the arc in real time, because like, you know, they had to like loop over and over again with Coralie and Helia, right? It's either that or like we know it takes like a return trip from Mars to the Earth takes a really long time. You know, let's come back here one more time. It's about 2 years, I think. So the possibility is that they retrieved the computer and it's actually 2026 in the timeline right now. That's the other solution. Let's see. Trying to see where it is. It's like around the time. Oh, here we go. January 1. Here's hoping everything goes smoothly in the new year. There are 9 months left until we return to Earth from here. Okay, so maybe not that long, but this implies to me, because like they had to like take the quantum computer with them back to the moon, right? And it does take time to do that. I guess there were 9 months that they were expecting to be on this mission, and then they were going to return home. Here we go. With coordinated support of the former judgment, it takes 2 years for a round trip to Mars. I'm assuming. Okay, maybe they're just saying like the entire mission itself took 2 years. It's like 1 year there, 1 year back. I can't remember the dates for when they launched off in... Actually, we got some dates in chapter 8. Yeah, give me a second to take a look at this. I think we got some dates in chapter 8. It's like the day that they were on their mission, on like their mission. Well, this was no, this is the date that they were on their way to the moon. This is something we already knew. Never mind. Let's see. There was a date where they were actually on Hyperion 11, but I don't know if they listed it. Checking the chapter 8 footage right now. took them like 3 days to go from the Earth to the Moon, and they stick with the technology we have currently. So there's probably some info on the net. Yeah. Let's just look at this real quick. On trip or trip to Mars time. A one-way trip to Mars with current technology takes about 7 to 9 months. The return trip, including time spent on Mars, could take around 2 to 3 years. What it says. Okay, so like, I think the implication is factors like planetary alignment and propulsion technology can influence travel time. That makes sense. So they actually couldn't leave Mars at all for 9 months, I'm assuming. So that means actually it probably is like 2025, 2026. In terms of like the current timeline. Maybe that's why they haven't really talked about it yet. Which means we're actually closer in the timeline to APHO than I originally was thinking. Because if their arrival on Mars is like January, right? January 2024 or February 2024, something like that. Takes them, I guess, a whole year to get back. That means it's probably, well, it was like, let's say it was like 7 plus 9. That's like 18 months. So it's like summer 2025 right now in the story. Hey, that's like now, right? Isn't that kind of funny? The timeline's actually caught up. If we think about it like that. It's like, by the time chapter 9 rolls around, the timeline will actually just like naturally be caught up. If my calculations are not like entirely off, you know. So yeah, I don't know what the date is that APHO 3 happens. Like, I don't think they gave like a season of the year as far as I know. Well, let me think about this real quick, because like in APHO 1 they talk about like the disappearance of Welt, right? And maybe there's a date based on that. Let me check real quick. Story explain. Everyone's got story explain. Anyone just got like a playthrough, bro? I don't think this is the first one. Post Honkai Odyssey. I need post Honkai Odyssey 1.0. Cause like if they have a date for when Welt was kidnapped, that gives us an idea. Buffering. Boy. This is someone definitely recording from their phone or something, because the audio is so rusty. Absolutely no bass whatsoever. Ready, come to the intel room and find me. Mission reports. Name. Mr. Yang. April 27. It's April 27, 2026. That's the beginning of APHO3. This is probably something to take note of and remember. I didn't really think about that. So maybe we'll get APHO3 around that time next spring. Like, makes sense, doesn't it? It's like 2026 anniversary, APHO3. Think about that. Okay, anyway, we came here to do event, so we're gonna go do the event and use this box. Where is it? Outfit box. Kind of just assume APHO3 was gonna be part after part 2, but you never know, I guess. Yeah. Magical Girl Bronya or Magical Girl Shiar? What do you say? Are you liking part 2 so far? Oh, I love part 2. I'm locked in. I'm totally locked in. Okay. You know my answer? Yeah, I already have a skin for Beliona, so we'll get this one. That way, her short reason finally has something to wear. I can't wait until I can get her divine key, because look at this sad key of reason, dude. I started the game when the Evangelion update was out, so I could have gotten these, but I couldn't imagine spending money on outfits, in my patch where I started the game. But kind of regret it, because I mean, look how good these are. This will work though. I'll take this. Okay, yeah, let's play this thing before I before I forget about it. Which one of these is the story? Yes, the Paradise Fiesta 6. Is this the story? Okay, I'm assuming so. I was really surprised how personal the writing is. There's a lot of inner monologue regarding Helia's feelings that I appreciate. Reminds me a lot of Arc City Kiana. Yeah, it was like this really deep level of introspection that is like trademark Honkai Impact. Like, that's the content that everybody loves and made people fall in love with it in the first place. And I think most people who have gone through the Helia arc really enjoy it. And we finished chapter 8 last week, just machine translation from Chinese, and I was pretty satisfied with the conclusion, and I'm very happy with what happened with Helia as a character. So
我需要你们调查的第一个人，也是3人中第一个进入办公室的人。
Down horrendous, huh?
监控录像显示，他在办公室。那他的嫌疑也太大了。如果你能逆转常规思维，那我就是替老板守护了空无一人的办公室的无名英雄。
completely forgot what this entire event story is about. I'm just assuming it's like they're taking rice cake on a little adventure.
抱歉，老板。
I'm not your sister. I'm a lawyer. Sorry, boss. I got stuck in traffic and arrived a bit late.
哇 ，Bronya， 你是不是太……这世上只有2类人，狼和羊。
How do you feel about Vita? Are you a fan of hers? Oh yeah, I've been a fan of Vita from the beginning. I will say though, I'm not particularly a fan of Sparkle. I wasn't really a fan of her in HSR, and I don't think I really care for her chemistry with Vita. But Vita as a character herself is fine. Like I have no beef with Vita. In fact, I like Vita. What can I say? I think Vita was a really good addition to the cast.
我会自愿被你吃掉。那就长话短说吧。找回红包才是当务之急。Bronya 律师，我想让你展开说说。
Well, my beef with Sparkle like even outside of HI3 is that like Sparkle and HSR in the Penacony arc did like I mean it was like we were waiting for her to do something, and we were waiting for her to do her whole bomb thing, and they saved that for the end, like way at the end, and then she didn't do, she like, it was all just a joke, haha. It was like, okay. I didn't find that all that compelling. Hold up. My chat is a little bit squished. There we go. I can read everything properly.
没问题。昨天上午骑车上班时，我
Seven
看到路边的
homos.
下午进入老板的办公，无奈之下，我决定先离。没想到，老板，精彩中的精彩
A pinnacle among masterpieces, a comic among
简直可以
comics.
说是人类漫画史上永垂不朽的巅峰。是啊，面对这样一部旷世巨作，我相
I
信
just
没
feel
有
like
人能做到
also
一言
Sparkle
不
didn't
发
really
一夜不
doesn't really bring out the best in Vita. Like Vita being all angry isn't really like what, or not, but like silly angry is like what a surface level reading of Vita is. But I feel like, you know, if you play through the story, then Vita is actually pretty emotionally vulnerable. She just doesn't handle it in a very straightforward way.
而他，就你，
And it's, you know, the HI3 characters bring that out of her emotional vulnerability.
你怎么不帮我处理我的事情？
And the whole thing is that Vita is actually really genuine. She just is bad at expressing it.
抱歉，老板，与您积压的工作相比，还是漫画具有更强大的吸引力，这让我的手不自觉地翻开了它。你坐上了我的位置，那你怎么不帮我处理我的事情？顺带一提，在阅读过程中，我没有做过任何折角、卷书、划线之类贬损漫画价值的事。反对！抢在别人之前看漫画，本来就是最贬损漫画价值的事。我反对你的反对，在老板正式收下漫画前，我依然是。
Now, one thing I am not liking about HI3 is, of course, these dry periods between story release and event. Like, it's brutal. Like, what's there to do, dude?
你根本不知道。
Like, we just went through chapter 8, and it's gonna be a whole nother month until that comes out for us in the EN? Like, bro. I mean, I guess, like, Tushan stuff is coming out next week, or in, like, a little under 2 weeks. So, I feel like they could have actually done stuff with Sparkle, but they're too afraid to dip into the water, yeah. And, we all know the Star Rail stuff in Part 2, Chapter 5 was, like, pretty shoehorned in.
能收到这本我太早了。罗丽莎姐姐好像根本不在意漫画被人，没关系。布罗尼亚律师
Show me your driver's license.
对不起。
Sorry, my license.
我的驾照和你刚
What
刚
arcs? Which is your favorite? Oh, I have a tier list. Let's see. I actually can probably maybe move some stuff around in this tier list. Let's see. Monitor 1? Oh. Well, I'll just move down here. So here's my story arc tier list. I'm gonna put let's call this Rimu arc. I don't think I can put Rimu arc at the top yet, but I do think I like it better than Senti arc. Well, I mean, I probably like it better than ZZ Volume 1. Oops. I didn't think that would move the whole thing. Like, if Rimu arc ends up having a really, really satisfying ending, I could see it maybe jumping up to the top of A. We'll see. It's like, it's got to be really, really good. You can see here the Longcho arc, Tide the Time Gone By, is an S rank. story arc for me. Now where would I put this first half of Amphorius? I actually don't like Amphorius very much. It's gotta be, well, I think I will say I probably like it better than Realized Bellflower. Do I like it better than Beyond the Stars? No. So I think tentatively, Amphorius is gonna go B rank under Beyond the Stars. Yeah. Natlan. I guess this is probably from the last time I adjusted it. I have like a ton of criteria for why certain things are in certain places, but I think I'm relatively sure with this. I like Amphorius better than Penacony, but that's only because I would place that stuff in F tier. Well, I'm like, I actually will say I like Penacony more than Amphorius, not because Penacony is like deeper, but I do think Penacony was more exciting, at least in the beginning, and like the build up, the pacing was like pretty rough, but I think the moments that hit in Penacony were pretty good, which is why, in my opinion, like it was a splash with the audiences at the time. It's like, if you really think about Penacony too hard, which we did, then you probably won't will end up being like, actually this is kind of whack. But I think when it came to like hype moments, Penacony was able to do them. I did think some of those hype moments were goofy, but they were like, you know, a spectacle. On the other hand, Amphorius is kind of missing the spectacle to me. You know, for how cool what's Pollux's, for how cool like Pollux is, in like the animations and stuff, and like in the battle stuff, like Pollux kind of wasn't all that interesting in the actual story. I think like there was like an emotional angle to it, but I was kind of expecting Pollux to come in like boom, you know, like terrifying, like Dragon of Death, like, you know, but it didn't really seem all that threatening to me. And I think like I'm not gonna say emotional, but I was moved when Trian bit the dust, but I can't say I felt like, yo, you know. There's no moment of Amphorius that made me go like, yo, they did the thing, yo. And yeah, so like, and we're three story arcs in, and like what 20 something hours into Amphorius's story arc, and like, where are my like crazy moments? Like, let's just compare Amphorius's 20 something hours to Ruimu arc so far. What did I say again? Like, inclusive of 4 to 8 is the same amount of story time as we've been in Amphorius. This is talking about HI3. HI3 part 2, 4 through 8 is roughly the same time we've been in Amphorius, maybe a little bit less. And think about all the crazy moments that happened in this Rimu arc. Chapter 4 is like the reveal of Layla and Vita going off. You know, Chapter 5, First and Last War. I guess there isn't really like any super ultra hype moments here, but like, I think about like the reveal of young Chen Shui and like Coralie having her fight and winning the fight and stuff. That was pretty cool, Chapter 5. There's probably at least one more that I can think of, but you know, and I guess you could say whether or not you care about it, and I don't care about it, but like they tried to play off Sparkle and like the Star Rail stuff as like a hype moment in Chapter 5. And like, regardless of how I feel about it, I do think like a bunch of content creators thought Chapter 5 Star Rail stuff was cool. So there's that. Chapter 6. That That's the Corley chapter, the Corley chapter, right? The Helia chapter. Like so many moments in chapter 6, like building up the emotional impact, and for the catharsis at the end. And then chapter 7 is Helia like crashing out. That was a great chapter, and then the big reveal at the end. And like then 70X was like the entire backstory of Layla, and then chapter 8, I don't want to spoil it too much other than it's like the end of the Helia arc, and there's no like huge animation, but it was, I felt, very satisfying, very like you definitely felt like Helia's story arc came to a satisfying conclusion of sorts. I mean, she's definitely got way more to do. She's gonna do in the future, but like as a character, you can tell she's reached like her next stage. And like on the other hand, if I think about Amphorius in like the first story arc, like Amphorius 1, it was mostly world building, and like we went and dealt with Nikador, and we learned about the characters and stuff. But I don't think it wasn't particularly character focused. It was like lore focused, right? And then Amphorius chapter 2, that was like Trian and Mighty, and I think they did a good job. They did a satisfying enough job, like telling the story of Mighty and Tribby. So I feel like I got everything that I needed to know about them, And yeah, like Tribby's speech was pretty good. I felt it was very like honkai-ish, so that was nice. And then this chapter we got Anaxa and Castorus having their moments. I have to say I didn't really care for Anaxa. I mean, he's like aura farming, you could say. He's aura farming. He's a big dramatic guy, but I wasn't particularly like compelled by him. I felt in a lot of ways he had a lot of narrative parallels with like Aventurine. It definitely felt like they were making a character who would appeal to a demographic that likes Aventurine. That's how I put it. Not that he is like just a redo of Aventurine, just like it's hitting a lot of the same notes as Aventurine and a little bit of I'll Hate Them, And I'm like, I've seen this before, and it was a little like over dramatic, whatever Anaxa had going on, and I didn't feel like Anaxa's motivations are particularly personal to him. I'm like, he's like proving a point. It like his whole arc is about I'm proving a point, but I didn't really feel a whole lot of like he wants to prove a point because of this emotional thing that happened in his backstory, right? Like I don't think I detected that, so I'm kind of on Anaxa. Castorus, I think they're pouring all their resources into Castorus. Seven animated things for Castorus, and the whole story arc is about her in some way. And I think they did a good enough job on Castorus's thing. And I can't say that I got like weepy over whatever happened with Castorus, but I think for what she needed to be, she was, and that's fine. That's totally fine. So yeah, like I don't think the moments so far in Amphorius have been as strong as the moment to moment in Rimu arc, which is interesting to me because Amphorius as a story arc feels bigger, like way bigger than the Ruimu arc. But maybe that's kind of the problem, right? Is that Amphorius is trying to tell this gigantic story, but despite spending so much time, it's like also not enough time. It's like strange. It's like they're not using the time, I think, in the wisest ways. in telling its story. And it's just, yeah, it's just a little too big for, like, there are too many characters that they're having to juggle in Amphorius. Ruimu arc, on the other hand, is funny enough, like the stakes in Ruimu arc and Amphorius are pretty simple or similar. Where it's like the fate of the world is in the balance, and there's like a samsara involved here or there, and like there's the gods who are watching over the world, and everyone's worrying about like you know, the good gods and the bad gods, and like becoming a god and how much it sucks to become a god. Like it's like the same themes with Ruimu and Amphorius, but Ruimu is only having to focus on really like two characters, and everybody else is kind of has been like secondary to that. You know, they support like the narrative, but it's not really having to share that screen time with many people. You know, and that means that it can be a lot more focused on the emotional moments. Like the Ruimu arcs characters, like who actually like are important in it are Layla, Helia, Horley, and maybe a little bit of like what's his name, Litost. Although I guess we don't really see Litost's emotions. Baiji had like his moments at the beginning, but yeah. And you know, for the most part, a lot of these characters are characters we've been dealing with for a while now. So I feel like the setup for Ruimu is more conducive for that. So there are reasons why Ruimu, to me, is a little bit more satisfying to get through than Amphorius. There's another thing where, like, you know, in Amphorius, when these characters' time is up, like, it's up. Like, we'll probably get another moment or two with like Tribi, or a moment or two with Mighty, and so on and so forth. Like Castorus is going to come back later in the Amphorius arc. But when Amphorius as a whole is done, like, are we really going to see these characters again? I don't know, man. While on the other hand, like, I can feel confident that everyone we're with in Ruimu is going to continue forward, right? Like Helia reached her next stage, and that's going to continue forward, you know? And Entropy is reaching her next stage, so that's going to continue forward. Whatever happens is like retained in the core of the story. So I think like the foundation is just like fundamentally better for like the continuity, you know? Sorry, I let me look at your comments. Let's see. I don't know. With how HSR has handled death, I'm not really too keen about it. Kirby's speech with Castorus did make me cry though. Yeah, like what they did to what's her name, Tingyun, was pretty sad to me. Like I was pretty sure that Tingyun was gonna come back. Like I think they, you know, left that door open for sure. But the way they had built it up in the past was that Tingyun returning was going to be a big deal, but it just kind of happened off screen and to very little fanfare. She's not even the main character of the very patch she returned in. It's Sunday. Actually, it's so strange because like so first of all, they shaft Tingyun from her resurrection being like, you know, an interesting thing. It kind of is just like played off for like whatever, in favor of trying to make, you know, do a story arc redeeming Sunday. So Sunday gets redeemed, and you know, spend a lot of time with him, and then here we are in Amphorius 3 chapters deep, and I like Sunday isn't even really a part of the story. Like he's there, he's with Welt, he's like commenting. He commented like twice, right? And it's like you built him up in such a way, but like if he was like on Amphorius, I feel like his input would be so, you know, it would be good for him as a character, because we already know what Dan Heng feels about any given thing. Like, as far as he is existing on Amphorius, like, what is Dan Heng actually contributing to the story? I don't think I can say that Dan Heng has like been a useful part of interpreting the plot of Amphorius. He's basically just a second Trailblazer, just kind of dumb-eyed, like going through everything and like just taking it as it comes, right? There's not really a whole lot of times where Dan Heng just doesn't have very good chemistry with the Amphoria's cast, and he doesn't have a whole lot to contribute as far as his thoughts. Like, imagine if it was Sunday on the ground instead. Like, could Sunday have a thought about like, oh yeah, the sense of control that's happening here in what's the city, Akuma? It's like, if Sunday was like in Aquaman, he was like, yeah, this whole thing with the elders reminds me of whatever is going on with what's his name, Mr. Gopherwood or whatever, you know. Like, maybe that's a little corny the way I'm telling it, but like, you know, like Sunday could use his experience to build off of that. Dan Heng, on the other hand, is just still a blank slate type character, you know. I mean, I feel like, of course, they have intentions for Dan Heng later. So that's what they're gonna do, but it's just like the rhythm of the way Star Rail is telling its story is very unsteady and very fleeting. Anyway, I'm super rambling about this. Casterus reminds me a lot of Misthalin. I don't know if that was the intention though. I don't know if it would be the intention, but she definitely is very much like Misthalin. It's like so strange because Casterus is taking the place of one of two flame chasers. Not like that. Not that she is really like either of these two, but her slot fits into one of these two. She fits the slot of Mobius or Griseo. Not that, once again, not that I think Casterus is supposed to line up with these two characters. It's just like if you take the Chrysos Heirs and the Flame Chasers next to each other, like she would have to fit into one of those two slots. But she doesn't really like either of those characters for the most part, I think. Instead, she's got lots of parallels to Misthalin and Shi'ar Sele. You know, with Sele, she's got the entire like twin thing and the entire like life and death like duality thing. You know, that's very, and then of course a scythe, right? And then there's the deer in the animation, and so Casterus has a lot to do with Sele, but then she has a lot to do with Misthalin because Misthalin was like a walking specter of death when she was in her first iteration, right? So I think emotionally she was a lot similar to the first Misthalin. So it's kind of interesting they did that. The thing is, like, I don't think the writers are unaware of these types of connections. I don't think they're stupid. I think they make boneheaded decisions, but I don't think they're stupid in not knowing how a player base would react to certain moments, especially because they wrote HI3, right? Like, they're closely connected with it. So I think there is a parallel there that you could make and that the writers are aware of. And that's probably as far as I will say the similarity goes. I'm just being careful myself. I'm not refuting you. I'm just making an observation. Yeah, well, that's the nature of the small cast versus big ones by the end of the day. Yeah. So I quite like part 2. Something that I feel HSR is lacking in is character moments. For example, there's a lot of scenes in part 2 where you can see the character shining. Vita getting mad at Ajita, for example, bickering with Teresa, Helia's various inner moments, Corley, Helia bickering with one each other, etc. I can't really think of anything like that in HSR. Yeah, like I think there have been moments that I like with character, because like what you're getting down to is mostly character chemistry moments, right? And if we think about I'm gonna get some movement here. Let's think about like Salt Snow Holy City arc, right? Salt Snow Holy City arc was probably, in my opinion, one of the best arcs Hoyoverse has ever written for character moments, like what you're saying, character chemistry moments. Like, you genuinely could feel at the end of Salt Snow Holy City that everybody there really cared about each other, right? Like, even Vita was like, she had such a great relationship with everybody, and it was like centered around the anxiety of like the two Sele's. and like their fear of like their separation, and Shigeru Kira is dealing with like her post-traumatic stress, um and her like abandonment, like guilt, or her survivor's guilt. Like that's Kira's thing. And then now she's like, you know, the senpai to Sele and Susanna, and Susanna is dealing with like her internal trauma. And it's like everybody's emotional concerns like builds into each other, you know. Even like a character like Mistalin. Like Mistalin was someone who was feeling guilt over what she did with Project Stigma, and so she was trying to clean up the mess in the bubble universes, and she, you know, went all out to sacrifice herself in Salt Snow, you know. And she, in a lot of ways, like she does talk about having like motherly traits in Salt Snow Holy City, and you can feel that she kind of was like the mother hen to the group in Salt Snow. It's like stuff like that, right? And that to me was like a great model for what you should do, is that there's like a central character's like anxiety, and then everybody else has their weakness and their anxiety, and they kind of revolve around each other and can lift each other up, you know, or they chafe against each other. You brought up like in part 2, there's lots of moments, like the moment where Coralie and Helia have their little fight, and it works because it's a very simple human emotion that we've all experienced. You know, the feeling of inadequacy that Helia has. It's not really like fantastical. If we think about like the issue that like Casterus has, Casterus's like internal character conflict is that she kills people, and so she's lonely. And I think obviously that can work because Mistalin did it, right? Mistalin made that work. But how did Mistalin make it work in the first time around? What happened with Mistalin is the first Mistalin meets Bronya's mom, and then has to make a decision like of like how to deal with Bronya's mom, because she's going to give birth to Bronya, and like has to, you know, sacrifice the life of one for another. And like that was extremely compelling to me, you know. For Casterus, on the other hand, it's kind of interesting because most of her growth happened in the past, right? Or most of her trauma is like bound in the past, and I don't think really like you could say what Anaxa reveals about Casterus, about like the nature of the Chrysos heirs, finally like relieves Casterus of her separation anxiety or whatever, or like her loneliness, because she finally understands like her purpose and the sacrifice of her sister. But that's like realizing something in the past. That's not like Casterus making an active choice, I think. She just kind of came to terms. She became at peace with something that happened, but it wasn't like, I mean, I guess she made a choice to stay behind in the netherworld, but that's not like, I don't know. It doesn't feel the same to me. It doesn't feel the same to me. Because let's also compare what Casterus did to the Flame Chasers. If we think about the Flame Chasers and each of them one by one sacrificing themselves in Elysian Realm, it feels different because like we know Casterus is gonna come back. It feels different. I can't get emotional over the idea of Casterus staying behind in the netherworld, because once again, like they didn't even play up that moment as an emotional moment. It was like instead a moment of catharsis in some way. It was like Casterus is at peace. She's happy in some way, or she's found her purpose, and it's like good job, and she stayed in the netherworld. And it's like, it wasn't, I can't, like the reunion with her and her sister was emotional, but her ultimate choice wasn't emotional, you know? And once again, like to bring it back to Honkai 3 stuff, is like Casterus wasn't like resolving her plotline really didn't have anything to do with anybody else. And Mighty resolving his plotline really didn't have anything to do with anything else, anyone else. Like no one really majorly helped him get there. I mean, I don't know. There isn't really another character who's like bound to his to any of these characters' sense of identity. I agree. I really like Salt Snow. Chemistry between Red and Senti was great. Misthalin, Prometheus were fun. Same with Vita, say like for Susanna. Vita's backstory is really good too. I like the presentation and the engine cutscenes that were in that arc that I appreciated. And the CGs were very funny. Boss fight was also great. Yeah, I mean Salt Snow was S tier. It's an S tier arc for me. I mean I have my problems with Salt Snow. Most of those problems have faded a little with time, but I've watched a couple people replay it lately, and it's like, okay, they yap a whole lot in Salt Snow Holy City, but like they're mostly yapping in service of understanding the characters' relationships. Another thing is, of course, like most of the characters in Salt Snow, we didn't really have to like rehash their backstory, right? Like we knew about all of them. And so it was just a matter of like dealing with whatever their current emotions were, you know. It's like dealing with how they feel then, like in that moment, you know. And it wasn't like we had to dig up their tragic past because we already dealt with that in the stories. Like the main issue with the two Sele's in Salt Snow was about their current anxiety. It had nothing to do about what they were like, you know, as kids, because that was a different trauma. That was like separation from Ronia. You know, they dealt with that. And yeah, it's just like I don't think maybe this is just totally unfair comparison, of course, because Amphorius is a brand new arc with brand new characters, and Salt Snow is an arc with established characters. And if HSR could take like a cast that we're already aware of and like mash them all together, you know, maybe it could do something like that, you know. So it's just like, will they? There's too many characters. Like, do they really have time to go back? And they're trying to like finagle like Acheron and Black Swan into the story, and also like the Stellaron Hunters are in this story somehow too. There's just too many characters in Amphorius. It's like too many people like trying to take time from the story, and also just like it's also not really a story about the Trailblazer. Okay, like I'm gonna bring it back to part 2 now. Is like I like whatever the Trailblazer is going through in Amphorius is like, is it really that personal to them? I mean, they're seeing all this stuff happen, and like the Trailblazer's whole like, oh, I'm dying, I'm dead. It didn't seem all that. Actually, okay, I'm gonna pull something up, okay, and this kind of encapsulates my my beef with this Trailblazer stuff. So like in the middle of this casters thing, like Trailblazer says this, I made it, my character arc is finally done. And they play it there, she's saying it for laughs. And one part of this is that I don't really care for the Trailblazer always being jokey. Like, because the Trailblazer is always being jokey, it doesn't give off an energy of them taking these things seriously. And then they tried to put the Trailblazer in other moments and act like the Trailblazer is like emotionally wrecked, and they just don't feel like a real person. They don't feel like they have genuine emotions, you know. Another thing is like my character arc is finally done, and it's like, what character arc? What character arc exists for the Trailblazer in Amphorius so far? Like, they're basically just a witness right now. Like, what about it is changing them fundamentally as a character? And the problem is, like, we just don't know what the Trailblazer's motivations are. we don't know, like, what does the Trailblazer want? What does the Trailblazer care about? I can't say they really do care about anything other than let's all have a good time and I hope everybody's safe. You know, there's no part of like the Trailblazer where they're like, oh, I'm worried about this Stellaron inside me and it hurts people. You know, that's like what Kiana's whole character arc is all about, and in some ways Entropy too. Like Kiana's whole thing was like, you know, I am this specter of death, and wherever I've gone, as much as I try to help people, it hurts people, you know? And you would think that the Trailblazer would be along these same lines because like the Trailblazers got this big like star bomb in their chest, you know, they got the Stellaron. But the Stellaron inside of the Trailblazer has not actually played a part in any of these story arcs so far in any way. I mean, you could say the Stellaron is what lets them have the Eons gaze upon them or something, but like is that's just a power up. It's not like a character flaw or something that like is being utilized in an interesting way other than just to beat enemies up a little bit better, you know? I mean, you could say that fully gazing on the Trailblazer is like what's the word? Fully gazing on the Trailblazer is like giving them access to like the remembrance and mem and like all that kind of stuff. But like that's really about mem. That's not really something that about the Trailblazer, you know? Yeah, other characters usually go, "Oh, you got a star on you. You're special." Proceed to not do much with it. Yeah, like you remember Aventurine back in Penacony was like, and our Stellaron friend is like gonna be the key to like breaking this stalemate in Penacony, and then the Trailblazer didn't do anything like in Penacony. I mean, you could say the one thing that they had Trailblazer at the center of in Penacony was Black Swan. Oh, like they get the fake out ending, and then Black Swan's like, "Yeah, I put like a memory inside of your brain that helped us like break out." But that's like something that like Black Swan did, and maybe we were special enough to make it, you know, like the Trailblazer was like special enough for Black Swan to do it, but like, yeah, it it wasn't like an active thing that like the Trailblazer went through, or them using their willpower. And I always think about when it comes to like Trailblazer emotional moments is like, you know, the moment where Firefly died and turned into a bunch of goop. Like Trailblazer was like all angry about it, and I'm like, you knew this girl for like 30 minutes, dude, and don't tell me how to feel if you're trying to be a self-inserty type character and you've been so goofy the whole time. And then Firefly comes back and they're just kind of like, okay, whatever, that's nice. And then there's a really corny scene to me where Firefly is like taking the sparkle bomb up, and then the Trailblazer starts praying. Like, I thought that was so corny, dude. I didn't think they earned those kinds of moments. That's I don't know. It's like Trailblazer is a character that they're constantly glazing up, and they are just never in a situation where they're being forced to like struggle with their identity, you know, like, and just because they don't really have time for them. So like on the other hand, I think about like Entropy, and I always think about one of the first things in like 3EX is that Entropy is struggling with like her sense of reality collapsing, you know, every relationship she's ever had being like fake, you know, or not necessarily fake, but she's like, those are real to me. And she quotes Songchue. She says, like, don't I have like a beautiful history written on the golden leaf? Like, you feel how Songchue's whole story deeply impacted Entropy, you know? And I can't, I'm like, I'm sure they could do a scene with like that with the Trailblazer, but like it's not really in their character to do that, to be like retrospective. Like Entropy was extremely retrospective in chapter 4. You know, they had like it was that chapter 4 was basically the Entropy like dealing with a lot of stuff on her own, you know. And of course, like Layla's whole backstory like adds a whole lot to it. And I'm not gonna spoil too much of chapter 8, but like Entropy's in it, and Entropy does spend a little bit of time like anxious over like her connection with Layla and like how that affects everybody, you know? And you can feel the emotions moving Entropy back and forth, and it like carries the story in a whole lot of ways, and it makes Entropy very compelling, I think, in the cast. And like when the other characters comfort Entropy and say, I'm here with you, like as your friend, and like I'm, you know, it feels like not just genuine to me, but it feels like it goes two ways, you know. Like Entropy, I'm gonna suddenly now turn it to Genshin, and not that I have so much against Genshin, but like if I think about like Genshin or any of the other Hoyo games, like these characters in these stories are friends with us because we all, you know, we did their quest and we like helped them and stuff, and like that's like fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like a little bit different about Entropy and her friendship with other characters, because it doesn't feel like her relationship with them is like I'm losing my words and my train of thought here. Whatever, it's fine. Anyway, where am I? Part 2. I like part 2 a lot. I do quite like what they did, especially in the Longcho Seven Shoes arc. Like it was really slow, but you truly felt everything come together in the end, and that's probably what they're trying to do in Amphorius. If I were to compare, it's like what, you know, what happened in the Seven Shoes arc is like we spent the first 2 chapters basically just like lore building all the 7 shoes, right, and getting to know them and all their stuff, and it was very like Genshin Star. It's very much like what Amphorius is doing right now. But then chapter 3 happened, and it was like chapter 3 brought all the themes together that they had been building up, and then it was like twist after twist after twist, you know, and then it came to a very satisfying ending, and it like all tied into like how Songchue was like the center of their group, you know, and the character that they all cared about, and it was very much centered around Songchue's like, well, because to me it's like the question you get in the Seven Shoes arc is like, why is Songchue so important to the Rite of Tears, and why is Songchue the shoe of deception? And to me, I interpret that as Songchue is the shoe of deception because she deceives herself to have joy even in like, you know, the hardest circumstances. If you read like her character stories and whatever, is that like Songchue always knows how to like lie to find the positive, even when like there is absolutely no reason to have hope. Like Songchue is a character who has hope till the end, you know. And it was, and like, you know, and like her ordinariness, of course, and her own like sense of inadequacy being overcome by her fully like accepting her sacrifice. There's like I don't know, just so many layers to like Songchue's character, and you could generally feel the whole cast like loved her, you know. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Songchue is kind of a little bit of part of Felis and a little bit of Alicia. If you like put Pardo and Alicia into like one type of character, that was Songchue. So she was really good. On the other hand, like here in Amphorius, I think they're trying to have Phynon and maybe Cyrene be at the center of this Amphorius story. The problem to me is that Phynon is clearly gonna be some kind of like villain type character. I mean, like there's gonna be all sorts to him, and he's probably going to get redeemed, and you know it's going to be okay. Whatever happens with Finon, it'll be okay in the end. And if they intend for Cyrene to be a serious character, to be like Alicia 2 like they want it to be, well, the difference is like Songchue and Alicia were characters who were part of the arc from the very beginning, and not just like Mem has been in Amphoria since the very beginning in some sort of like observer type of way, but like Songchue and Alicia were the people who guided us through those arcs, you know, and that's why when it came all the way back around to being about them in Elysium Everlasting and in the Seven Shoes arc, like it was very satisfying because every character like went back around and fed into that, you know, and I just don't feel like I wouldn't want them to do that again, but like it's just strange because they are also doing lots of these things again, but it just doesn't, the foundation is just not the same. Anyway, let me read your big thing before I keep yapping. I also feel like HSR also isn't very well mapped out. For example, we have a pretty good idea of what the main idea was in part 1, now part 2, and in the future APHO. And for Genshin, they tell you, well, Traveler wants to meet their twin, there's these 7 regions, Dane's Leaf will show up to progress the plotline every now and then. Whereas HSR, the last time they had a main story segment was 1.2 with Kafka, where they discussed Nanook. Just the planet's locations need to be chosen at random without a purpose. Oddly, they haven't done much with the Express crew. Yeah, like... All right, will you forgive me if I bring up Wuwa a little bit? But I was reading a comment somewhere, just being like, I don't know how to put this into words, but it was like, okay, I forget the thought. So if I think about it again, I'll come back to it. But my thought is just like HSR, is just kind of meandering. You know, that's kind of like what you're saying, is that there doesn't seem like the story isn't really like building into itself. Like, I'm gonna go all the way back to Penacony. It's like, what did Penacony actually contribute to our understanding of the universe? It didn't really do anything. It also didn't really progress the Astral Express crew's like character development. Like, the Astral, from the perspective of the Astral Express crew, they go to Penacony, they make a bunch of friends, and they feel sad about what happened to like the previous generation of Trailblazers, and then they move on. That's basically all that happened in Penacony. They saved Penacony. Wow. They saved the universe. Wow. But like, they didn't really like come together, fundamentally changed as people. Like, all their convictions that they had coming into Penacony were exactly the same when they left. Like, they already believed all the same things, you know? And like, yeah, they introduced important characters in Penacony. You know, I guess Acheron's going to continue to be important, and Sundays with them, and Black Swans with them, and, you know, all that kind of junk. And Firefly's like, you know, our government mandated girlfriend, you know, like that's cool. Like, but that's just kind of like world building, and it's not really like central to the plot, because like you could remove lots of characters. You know, in a lot of stories, you can there's a whole lot of side characters that are really just fluff to the main plot line, and that doesn't mean that they're not important for adding depth and flavor to the entire story. But like, you know, it's like there's adding characters, and then there's like building into the theme. You know, that opinion will get you burned. And well, this is a it's my stream. I don't know which one specifically I said, but like, I remember when I first started playing HSR, and I was really excited that Himiko would get to be a living and breathing character, but she's been put by the wayside a lot. Yeah, it's like Himiko is basically there just to be the group mom, but then, and she's just there to aura farm every once in a while. And like, that's okay. It's disappointing, but it's whatever. Like, I don't think Himiko really did that much in Penacony. And like Welt's whole purpose is basically to just be there and be like, hey, look at this thing from my home world. Be sad. Be sad about it. Be nostalgic. You know, that's all really Welt's there to do. He's not really going to grow as a character. It feels like aesthetics and art farming and main story comes second and third. Yeah. The last good HSR story is Bellabog, in my opinion. Yeah, same here. That's why Bellabog is my top that's my top story arc for HSR. It was just like, it's also the last story arc that actually really has anything to do with a Stellaron, and it was the last one to actually tell us what a Stellaron does. Like that, like actually taught us anything about Stellarons. Because like, if you think about Bellabog, is like the Stellaron was totally at the center of the entire story. It's like it showed you how it completely corrupted what's her name again? Cocolia, you know, and like what it did to their entire planet. And it was so deeply affected by that story, and like the destruction was like at the center of all of that. And you know, like that was cool. Like it was good to establish the story. But we haven't really evolved past that like story setup since then. Like in Penacony, the Stellaron is like there, and it's like influencing whatever what's his name? Gopherwood was doing, like the family or the whatever family that Sunday and Robin came from. Like that's what the Stellaron was there for, you know. And I don't know if they were saying that like their whole nobody dies in Penacony was like related to the Stellaron in some way. But yeah, like the Stellaron is like the center of the story, but it's not really about, the story wasn't like about that. They just kind of dealt with it off screen, you know. In the Xianzhou Alliance, like the Stellaron was used to revive like the Arbor. See, I almost forgot about the Xianzhou arc because it's so nothing. But like in Xianzhou arc, yeah, the Stellaron like was at the center of like the tree, but the story isn't really, I don't know. It's Xianzhou's story was not really all that hot. I mean, that's why it's at the very bottom of this. Like it wasn't really, the Xianzhou's story was a whole lot of nothing, and like they didn't really deal with the Stellaron at all. Like I think they also dealt with that off screen. And so, and Amphorius now, like I'm sure there will be a Stellaron, and it's the reason why like the world of Amphorius is looping or something. But like, are they ever going to really delve into like why Stellarons are important? Are they just going to be the MacGuffin of each region? Like, I don't know. Like, what is the theme for each Stellaron? Because if you think about, if we're going to compare this to HI3, in HI3 part 1, at the center of, we're going to say the equivalent are like the Hersher cores. At the equivalent of the Hersher core is like a theme of some kind, a sort of like what it does. And some of those can be really simple, like Rhymestar and Ice was very physical. But like if you think about what the Hersher Sentience arc was about, like, you know, that mind gameplay was like just so central to like what that arc was about, and you could clearly understand that. You think about like the Hersher of Corruption in Elysium Everlasting, it was like really understandable to know what that was about, you know. Let's see, Amphorius arc is just a vacation. You want to know how a world works where people don't believe in the eons. Yeah, I mean, it seems like based on the interviews and stuff is like they're going to say, oh, this is how Amphorius connects to the rest of the universe, and like this is what's going on outside, and they're gonna do a big story of like, you know, catching up on what else is going out in the universe, you know, at the end of Amphorius arc. And it's like, okay, like it would be better if it felt like it was all building up to something and not just like you're wasting what's going to be like 50 hours of our time, you know. I wish HSR had a central antagonist. Otto, Kevin, Vita were really good when she was, whereas HSR is currently lacking that currently. I will say, as far as part 2 goes, I feel like part 2 is kind of juggling like a couple characters who fill that slot. Like Vita is an anti-hero type role. She's like not like a neutral in a neutral place. Like I don't think Vita's antics are quite done. I'm sure she has more to reveal, especially with how they used her just very slightly in chapter 8. But like I think Vita's got a little bit more that she's got to do. But she's not an antagonist, so we don't really think about her. It feels like the antagonist in part 2 is somewhere between whatever Layla's got going on, how they're going to use Layla in chapter 8 or chapter 9, and then Ajita is probably going to continue to be a villain in some way. But the nature of like what Ajita does is still like uncertain or unclear. Not in a bad way, just like there isn't really enough information to know what Cheetah will do. But she's like constantly been lurking in the background as this threat in some way, or as this anomaly or outlier. And I think that will continue forward based on chapter 8. Yeah, like in HSR on the other hand, like you remember when we used to think that the Stellaron Hunters were gonna be villains? But they're not. They really wanted to sell Mommy Kafka and waifu Firefly and bestie Silverwolf and you know, what would you say for Blade? Ex-wife? Like, you know, they wanted to I feel like they changed whatever they were doing with the Stellaron Hunters to they took away a lot of their threatening aura to make them now into the Trailblazers' second family, which is like fine. That's like okay, but like I think it would have been nice if the Stellaron Hunters were a little bit more aloof and more like causing some chaos. They caused some chaos like a little bit in Xianzhou, kinda, not really, but like they're not really a force, and yeah, they don't got that. Like even Genshin's got like a villain theoretically, like the Fatui are kind of villainous, and like there's lots of like factions that kind of come against like the Traveler, you know, and like obviously they're not perfect with it. They keep redeeming these characters, you know, but like they're at least like a force that like chafes against the Traveler, right? And I don't feel like there's really any friction that the Trailblazer and the Astral Express crew are really having with any characters. They're like they just kind of resolved everything with everybody. Like there's no like whatever beef they had with Sunday is basically gone, you know. All right. I mean that's the whole modern Hoyo effect, along with 10 billion to Casper's marketing. Haha. Like a lot of the concepts they have for characters is good, but the story execution is lacking. Yeah. If Amphoria's arc is an example, I wish they never visit HI3 universe and just be separate entirely. Makes the story for HI3 more unpredictable and interesting, in my opinion. Yeah, for sure. Uncle Blade. People calling me a hater when I say Firefly's entire character is to be a self-insert waifu. The thing is, like, I feel like Firefly does have interesting elements to her character backstory, but none of those really matter because, like, she's just there to look pretty for the Trailblazer, you know? It's like, you know, in Penacony, like, Firefly comes to Penacony. I mean, they retcon it, or I don't want to say retcon, but they like say later in Amphoria's that Firefly's in Penacony just because she wants to meet the Trailblazer again, right? Wow, so romantic. But before we knew all of that, like Firefly's reason coming to Penacony was to try to learn if there is an answer to her like whatever disease, her like super death or super cancer that she has, you know. And Jade's basically like, I can't give it that to you. You can't afford the answer. And Firefly's like, okay, and then she leaves. And so Like Firefly didn't even get what she was there for, other than I guess she was there to romance the Trailblazer. You know. Okay. I am glad with that Casterus, despite them wifing her up quite a lot, they actually kind of turned away from that in the end of Casterus's story arc. Like Casterus, like I think what I said at the time was like, oh, Casterus pulled an Ayaka. Like, you remember Ayaka back in Genshin was just like, oh, Traveler, you want to stay here and like chill with me and like be friends? And Traveler's like, bro, no, I gotta go find my sibling. And Ayaka's like, okay. And then she sadly dances in the puddle with like her socks on, you know. and then Ayaka's just basically cool for like the rest of Genshin. I mean, like, people try to make jealous Ayaka meme or whatever, but like for the most part, Ayaka's just kind of like chilling. She's not really, she's living her own life now. And it's kind of the same for Casterus. Like, I think Casterus for a moment was definitely like, I think I have a connection with this person. You know, she was all like, oh, Trailblazer, you can resist my touch. That's amazing. I think you're so special. And then she's like, oh, actually, Trailblazer, you're just dead. And it was like at that moment, Casterus is just like, I don't know if I'm really into you that much, you know? And then she's like, I'm going to stay in the Nether instead. And so goodbye, Casterus. You know, and we were joking that Casterus was like supposed to be the waifu of Amphorius, and so she shields Alicia from getting shipped off to the player. But it seems like Alicia / Cyrene getting shipped off to the player is back on the table. Oh boy. See, okay, I actually don't have a problem with having characters be girlfriend or be, you know, like shipped together. Obviously, because like Honkai Impact 3 is all ships. Like almost basically like every single character has like their ship. But that's the thing, is it's like they're not there to be shipped to the player perspective, and they're usually like commit to the one relationship, you know, and you can see like that relationship developing and going beyond just a crush, you know, and or like you can see like their dynamics with each other, you know. While when it comes to these like multiple waifu type games, you know, it's like they show interest in the player, and then that's basically where it ends, you know. And you know, I've watched many a harem anime in my time, and yeah, I guess a lot of the fun is the chase, right? But like, you know, it just after a while it gets a little bit like stale, you know. And so I kind of hope that they actually commit to Firefly being like our one and only character that's like super shipped with the main character. Like maybe other pretenders to the throne can show up, you know. But like I think it would be nice if like Trailblazer and Firefly could be the thing, and then they just commit to that, you know, and they don't have to say it out loud because, you know, they want to leave it up in the air for someone who wants to ship their self-insert with like, you know, some other character. Like that's okay, but like, you know, I think HI3's great strength is that there are pairings for the characters, they commit to it, and then they build on it, and it continues, you know. All right, that's me yapping. Let's see what else we're talking about here. We need some background music. Let's put on some background music while I continue. It's redeem or die with a Fatui. Who are your favorite HI3 characters? Oh, let me pull up. We were here. I'm so sorry. Here, I'm gonna skip this, but we'll just come back to it. You can see my account real quick. So you can see I'm Vilv appreciator. I really loved Vilv. Where's my profile? I was big fan of Kira. Super big fan of Kira back in I mean, I was a big fan of Kira from what she did in all the arcs before Salt Snow, but I think Salt Snow and like the Kira event really sealed her for me. I really love Susanna. Susanna was just so endearing as a character, I think, and just a ball of joy. And Sushang, I think is really cute. I wouldn't say Sushong's one of my stronger picks these days anymore, but I do quite like Sushong. I love Songchue. Songchue is a queen. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful character. I was a big fan of Pardafelis, you know, and I was truly like devastated to lose Pardafelis in the Elysian Realm. And so Songchue kind of hits a lot of the same notes as Pardo, and she lived. So I'm very happy about that. Okay, let's see. I don't know. I don't think it's impossible to connect HI3 and HSR, but I just feel like MiHoYo is going about it so roundabout. Like, I know they're trying to make a second Fate, but they're not committing. Yeah, like, it's like they're trying to build up, this connected Hoyoverse, but they're just not very, like, committal about it, you know? Like, they're very much like, do we or don't we want to like go all in on this story, you know? Sorry, suddenly my computer is like lagging like crazy. I don't know, is it Spotify? Ooh, just close everything. What if I move HI3 back up? Okay, there we go. That saved my frame rate. Let's see. I wanted to put on some music. Amphorius and Firefly were both broken on release too. Yeah, they can't commit because they don't want to anger any of the fan base, because HSR basically an entire new cosmology, whatever the fuck verse works on something entirely different compared to HI3. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the HI3 setting is in a lot of ways like narratively incompatible with HSR, and like, you know, they're trying to make it work, but like the scope of like HI3 had to like shrink in order for HSR to exist, you know? It was like they don't really coexist very well. And when Sparkle showed up in part 2 chapter 5 and all of the like Memo Keeper stuff happened, it really like made HI3 feel really small. It made HI3 feel like it was the, you know, little game compared to HSR. And I don't think any of us who have played HI3 liked that, because, you know, it's like we were really invested on the seriousness of HI3's story, right? And we were really compelled by it, and it felt really final. And then HSR is basically, this was my beef with Acheron's backstory, was that the whole idea is that Acheron came from a world that was basically just HI3, but they lost. And some people can say that's interesting, and I think that's fine. But to me, I think I was really bothered by it, because it was basically just like, oh, like HI3 is like nothing in the face of the eons, you know? And Acheron is like, you know, finality, but more because she's like an emanator of the eon of nihility. And it was like, it made all of the sacrifices, all of the amazing things that happened in HI3. It was like they were saying, oh, you know, all those awesome things in HI3, well, HSR is just this much better, you know, or this much more powerful. It was like, I didn't care for that, you know? And yeah. Let's see. If they want to connect HI3 to HSR, I want the force known as honkai to be like the force from Star Wars. Only few people can wield it, but they're very powerful, etc. Dark side, light side works too, because that's how honkai works, but they have a different idea. Yeah, I mean, like, where is the honkai and honkai star rail? You know, and there's a bunch of different ways we can approach that. Like, is honkai just imaginary energy, and then are just the paths just taking their power from like the conduit of imaginary energy that the paths of the eons makes, you know? Like, I don't know. Why is CN not voiced in this event? I'm on C server. Parts of it were voiced. I don't think everything is voiced, and it's kind of always been that way though. Like in most events, they like, if they have voices at all, like it's only going to be in CN, and even then, it's not every scene. So I don't think I don't think it's too much. Yeah, I was gonna put on music. um, I think your game files might be broken because there's some CN voice actors. Speaking of background music, I really like Part Two's OST. Oh, I love Part 2's OST. Actually, this is something I'll mention, is that like in Amphorius, in this, actually really in just any part of HSR, they don't really have like custom background music for like emotional moments. Like in HI3, as like an emotional moment comes on, like they'll play a track that fits the mood, you know, and it helps build it up. And you'll like in Part 2, there's a lot of very specific tracks. Like I guess since I've got the OST on, like hopefully you guys are caught up, but like there's a track like this, Apple Syrup. Like, doesn't this totally take you back to the moment where it plays? It's, you know, the Alter Helia and Corley, and Alter Helia is like writing in the diary, you know? And it brings you back to the moment, you know, when you hear the song. And of course, emotional scenes too. Let's see. I think it's is it Lighter Than Tears? Like this is the song that plays after Corley just, you know, died, you know. Sorry, I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody. I usually assume people in my chat are relatively caught up with the HI3 story. But yeah, this is like the song that plays when Corley dies and Helia is like weeping by herself, you know. And HSR doesn't really do custom little songs like this. A lot of the time, the song that plays is just whatever the background OST is for any given moment, or for like the area that they're currently standing in. You know, like I think about like there's the scene where Anaxa is like telling the people about the truth of Amphorius, and it's just playing like the normal Amphorius music, or the normal like music that plays in the area, and it's like a little bit like atmospheric and like cheery and stuff, and it doesn't really fit the drama of the scene, you know. The part in the Part 2 track when you're in the Ringmu Tower in the daylight, I think it's Peon of Day. Yeah, like this song is so like it's very ethereal and almost like threatening, you know. Let's see. Lake Blue Lake, Boats by Boats, and Apple Syrup are my favorites so far. I have both side by side in my car playlist. I cry every time. I think Boats by Side is like actually it's like a game version only song, right? Let me jump in. Oyo is a music company, no worries. I'm even caught up to chapter 8, lol. Yeah, you'd think they, with these 8-week or 9-week updates, they had enough time to catch up. Okay, let's pull the game in real quick. Both side by side. Yeah. It's kind of sad this, like, some of these songs are just not on the playlist, right? Sorry if it's a little quiet. It's very much like a visual novel kind of song to me. It's like the song that would play in a visual novel at a very sad scene. And it's like HSR and really any of the other Hoyo games aren't really conducive to doing those songs, and it just Like, I don't know. That's what is so beautiful about HI3. 9 weeks patch just so other Hoyo games could run, but there's still ass except ZZZ in my opinion. Okay, here's my thing about ZZZ. I actually really like ZZZ, its story and like how it's going and stuff. I won't say it's like blowing me away. It's not like, you know, I wouldn't say it's like, wow, this is peak media. I gotta make sure everybody knows about this, but it is satisfying. I felt like the end of ZZZ season 1 was very satisfying. And it wasn't anything that like I felt was new. It was very like expected. Everything happened exactly like I expected them to. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, if you play it straight and play it straight well, like that can be good. And so I quite like that in ZZZ. And the pacing wasn't too bad in ZZ's first little bits. This most recent chapter with Vivian and all that was a little bit longer than I think it needed to be, but we'll see. We got new ZZ stuff coming up really soon. So speaking of the tower, I really like the occult themes in chapter 7 with how dark it got. The other timeline stuff was wild. The other logs, other Helia shooting your teammate and sacrificing her to the monsters, Corley missing a limb. Yeah, it was like I think they really did a great job of making it feel heavy, like emotionally. And I mean and it's not foreign to HI3 to be there, you know, and it doesn't feel out of line with the tone, and everyone takes those moments seriously, so it's not like you know, nobody's there and then cracks a joke. Okay, this is me throwing shade at Trailblazer, but like we really went through that entire thing, and you could feel how traumatized Helia was. Helia was absolutely traumatized during chapter 7, you know, and that was good. That was right. That was what they needed to do. Oh, I still haven't done the event, which is what I came here for. Well, I said it was a yapping stream. I didn't say it was an event stream. Where's the song? There's like a part 2 song that doesn't show up in the album, but it is here. Not this. It's not Bring Me Down to Pleiades. Oh, this one. Deep Dark Vortex. Yeah. Now, this is a song that we originally heard the first time you go to the Crown of the World at the very beginning of chapter 1. I felt the same. Part 2's OST really reminds me of VN songs, which I enjoy a lot. I'm still thinking about that one Tinian guy that was upset that she died. I thought this game was supposed to be a space comedy. Yeah, there was this YouTube video that was like Tinian's death and HSR really offended them. They were like, I was told that this game was a space comedy, and then you kill my favorite character? What kind of comedy is this? I'm quitting HSR. It's like, dude, you are so weak. Like, just because it's a space comedy doesn't mean it has to like commit to that. But then they don't. I don't think HSR is very good about managing its tone. HI3 still has better camera work and storytelling format. I mean, genuinely, like, when chapter 8 came out, we did the machine translation stream, and we did that right after we had just finished Amphorius's newest story chapter, because it came out like one day and then the next day. And, like, the contrast was like night and day. It was like Chapter 8 had so many like great CGs and incredible like scene compositions. I'm not gonna pull up chapter 8, but let me pull up chapter 7. What's it called? Honkai Part 2, Chapter 7. Like, if we think about like chapter 7 had and chapter 6 had like so many good like scene compositions. Let's see. Like, I think one of the things that HI3 does is that usually when in like one line, the characters will have like multiple movements. So their head will move around, they'll look at each other, you'll see them walk a little bit, and then the camera angle will shift. They'll like cycle through an animation, you know? It's like they'll have multiple movements in one line, which helps to convey the emotion through their body language, right? While in HSR, like one line, they'll just stand there blank face at the camera like the whole time. Like, we'll just observe this. Look at the. They'll see. There's another cut. Looked away from each other. Now, like, look at something like this. Look how the scene composition tells a story here. Is like all these girls are looming big on Coralie, but Coralie, and even though like Coralie is like so small in this scene composition, I'm like using my hands like you can see me, but Coralie is like so small in this scene composition, but she does not care, right? Despite them towering over her, Coralie is standing like confident here. And look, there's another movement. Let's see if she makes another movement before the end of this line. See, even that line wasn't even done, and we already shifted to another camera angle. Look at that. Hand movement, camera moving to the right, and then Helia looks at her. Body language, locking. There's another body movement, like pose shift, another pose shift. And this is all in one line. Next line, to these characters, they turn around multiple times and walk off. Like, was that crazy? No, that wasn't crazy. But like in HSR, they would just stand there and they would just look at, you know, one character's face the whole time with no additional movements. You know, it's like little things which play into the emotion of the moment. Yeah, no, not too specific about chapter 8. But I know what you're talking about. That was very, very satisfying. Yeah, so this isn't even like an action scene, right? But I feel like it communicates quite a lot. And of course, here, chapter 7 starts with the Kabedon, right? This is crazy. You know, a custom animation just for the Kabedon. Like, sorry, like the way I say sorry because this is like crazy, but like it like this subtle thing of Coralie like looks down at Helia's chest, then looks up at her face, and then tilts her head a little bit, looks away, and looks back. This is like so much body language, you know? Like, let's go back to chapter 6. I can think of like one really good chapter 6 moment. It's like Vita interacting with Ajita, and during that scene, there's quite a lot that you can get out of Vita's body language here, you know, and it can't communicate that just purely through lines. Like the camera angles and the body language do so much. It carries this moment.
れは不思議なビタに聞いてみたら？
こちらのビタ？ああ、あなたがあのスペースハッカーのビタなのね。あなたがアバター最適化モジュールに気づいて有効化してくれるとは思わなかったわ。
And you know, like Peach Salt here has mentioned to me before, but like, you know, the HSR models actually are capable of more emotion. They actually are more advanced in like how their rigs work, similar to like ZZZ. I think ZZZ is the most advanced ones, but like HSR is more advanced than HI3. Yet HI3 can do more with, or is doing more with its more limited rigs. And it all comes down to how they use the camera angles and how they use the blend shapes for the faces. Because like all that happened here is that, so you see Vita's smiley face here, frowns a little bit and faces towards the camera, and you can tell like her body language has completely shifted, and all that's here is it's very subtle, right? Not a whole lot changed, but you can feel like the body language is doing so much that if they were just staring at each other, it would not communicate, you know?
君は本当に慣れ慣れしい人だね。あら、まさかビタの口からそんな言葉が出るなんて。こんにちは、アジタ博士。僕もずっと君。
Like this, where it like just zooms in on Vita's smiling face. You can tell she's like faking.
あの役立たずな機能は君が追加したってこと？僕が君の立場だったら、無駄なスペックはアーキテクチャに割り振って、向こうでポインターをもっと置けるようにするけどね。
ポインター？細かいことは気にしないで。完成させることは完璧であることより大事でしょ。
Like they're very intentional with the scene compositions in part 2. And I think it's pretty incredible. Like, I don't think any of the other games really is this intentional with every single movement. I actually genuinely think HI3 has like the best normal scene animation. Like I would say ZZZ has more impressive like cutscenes, you know. But this isn't a cutscene. This is just like a normal dialogue scene.
私のプログラムは使いやすいでしょ。でもアバター最適化モジュールは簡単なユーザーカスタマイズアバターじゃなくて。
I would say my tier list of like how they do their scene presentations, like HI3's dialogue scene presentations are probably the best. I would say Genshin is probably a little bit under that. Maybe Genshin and like ZZZ are like neck and neck for me. So like ZZZ doesn't really have like normal cutscene conversations like this. Actually, everything goes into the VN for the most part. It's like everything is either in the VN, blankly standing out in the overworld, or it's like a hyper animated like cutscene. There isn't really like an in between like what is going on right here. Scene blocking? Okay, we'll say scene blocking. Like, this is so funny. It's like memeable, you know? And like all that happened here is it's just using the models very simply, and like it's not too crazy. And then Vita sits back on the railing. Like, you know, these kind of animations you don't see in HSR. Like, all right, I'm gonna be a hater. I've been a hater this whole time, so who cares, right? HSR 2.3 story. Let's just compare. Okay. Oh, this is Penacony. 3.2 story. Okay, like here, even let's take this scene of Cypher's introduction.
I want to win, so I hope you two can give up on going to Styxia.
Like the voice acting has to do a lot here because Cypher has just been in this one pose the entire time.
However you want. What do you think? Tempting, right?
I decline. If we don't find the Death Titan, her soul will...
We're blankly looking at each other.
I can't go into the details, but we have to go to Styxia.
I really don't get how.
Maybe this isn't the most fair comparison. I'm trying to think if there are moments where let's see. Where maybe where Castris and her sister interact. Where they're walking.
And what irony. My selfish desire to save your life gave you and the world a fate far worse than death instead. Then, what was left of my reason?
Telling the story by walking.
Had a hope.
I mean, I guess this is a cool little composition. Nothing too crazy,
as far
but
as I'm concerned, you did nothing wrong. Even though I forced the authority of granting journey.
they don't really use their eye movements very much to communicate emotion. And they don't really use their
That if it weren't for you, I would
mouths to like in its entire line. Like Castor's had like 3 lines
have understood the meaning
and
of our existence.
just looked blankly off into the distance.
Death narrated by another's no their own.
I'm like skipping forward somewhat, but like yeah, like
Sergeant would see face your own any core flame. Give humanity back their
let's compare to HI3 chapter. We'll go back to chapter 7, maybe chapter 6, part 2. Maybe this scene where, let's look at this scene of Corley and Chintra talking about this child.
読めない人じゃないよ。会った時からあなたは怖い顔をしてて機嫌が悪そうだった。ま、その垂れた尻尾がそれを証明してるけど。で、私を警戒してるの？それとも誰かと喧嘩で？
See if Chintra has another movement at the end line. Nope.
私の尻尾はただの飾りだから。
Okay, look how much more focused this composition is too, because like we go back to the Castor's thing or like the last quest, and a lot of the time when a character is talking, you'll see their whole back, and the composition is incredibly flat. The perspective is super flat. Here, like you see how close behind. It's like Corley is talking to almost directly to the camera, like off to the side.
それに別に誰かと喧嘩したってるってこと？
And a lot more close-ups, I think, in HI3. I feel like Chintra and Corley had a good connection during this scene too. Let's go check out 7EX. I'm trying to remember moments from it. We've got a Caster's eye is intentional. Yeah. Sure. Layla walking. You mean the part where this part? Let's see. Her voice acting, dude.
自分の仕事までレイラに任せたんじゃないよね。大丈夫。セナディアが飾りたかった提灯はもう
I guess the composition of this cut isn't necessarily the best. This is an HSR cut right here. Looking away from the camera. And not moving. Well, maybe it's depending on the player position. low budget scene. Let's ignore that one.
誰もいない。私が高いところから落ちちゃって翼を折った。
It seems like it's the same position.
落ちちゃって翼を折ったみたい。どうしよう。まずは影の力。あなた
I guess they don't move too much here yet.
から帰れた。
I still think it was a good scene. Let me just say.
そのしみたい。見てレイラ。太陽が
Although I have to say, this scene does feel different from the other ones because actually it gives off the feeling of Senadina, or not Senna, like Layla is personally reminiscing on this, and so we're supposed to feel this from kind of a distant perspective of like the situation. Like she's not actively in this emotional moment, right? She's just reliving it, and so that's why it feels a little bit off. That I think it kind of, that's why it's a like okay here.
すぐ沈んじゃうよ。見えるね。入りを。だまあしないでもよ。
Like not looking at the camera. Like that's okay here. Oh, here we go. Cute.
分かったよ。虹や万華鏡のようないろんな色彩を集めて素敵。
Oh, Senna, you're so cute. I need you back like now. Where's that scene of like the time shifting over and over and over again?
知ればいいの？そこは経験、想像力と愛する心で。また冗談ばっかり言うんだから、セナディアは。全部本当。
I feel like HI3 also has more animations that it can pull from than HSR does.
いや、もしかして私のレイラは一瞬たりとも私から離れたくないのかな？もちろんそう返事をしたいが言えないことも知っている。彼女を失望させたくないからだ。そしていつものよう私は再び嘘をつく。そんなことは考えてないよ。本当？私が遠出した。
Okay, see, like look, Senna's like looking directly at like Dreamseeker here, but also like at the side. It's like I don't know, good little composition. 124:38. Okay, let's see. Keep Senadina. This was so cool.
きっとこの星を連れて遠い場所へ行ける。だから
Too busy selling characters instead of fixing their storytelling. At the end of the day, money talks. Yeah. And yeah, despite everything we feel about how awesome HI3 is, it's merely surviving. It's doing well. I don't think by any metric you could say that HI3 is really like in a bad spot. It's just not as strong as it was historically, but it's very stable. Lately, and it's, you know, it is making a profit, so it's not losing money, but it's not growing in any exponential kind of way. Okay, and then also I always appreciate that the HI3 CGs, like these like 2D scenes, are like animated, you know. So even if we have the one CG, like there's a animated moment that comes to it. People's view has been skewed since Genshin era. Yeah, 10 years old game and still earning millions. That's good. Yeah, like exactly. There's nothing wrong about it. I'm scrolling up to see if you guys said anything I missed. Yeah, I feel like the main thing HSR has to wrangle with is I gotta start with so many characters, and judging that many is a hard task to do unless you give less time to others. Yeah. And also, like, the CGs will sometimes have, like, 2 versions of it. So, like, okay. Even something like this moment, which is, like, a static CG, right? it like shifts, and then there's a second version of it. So it tells the story. And okay, here gonna be a hater again. Like, let's look at the CGs that they use. First of all, there are actually more CGs in Chapter 8 than there are in HSR 3.2. Let's see all the ones that they did. So they have this one CG of Casterus looking all pretty. What kind? Like, to me, it's like, okay, HI3 does cuts like this too, but I can't say this is telling a huge story. I mean, I guess Casterus is touching the player.
I cannot feel anything.
Is there a variation on this? I guess so. This one, where her mouth is a little bit more closed. Wow, what a change.
Before the fingers of Thanatos sweep everything away.
If I were to make a comparison, in 70X there is a cut like this, which is Nara Lab looking at the camera.
Just a few more.
Okay, and then we got Anaxa being in the land of the dead.
And harsh. The crowd of travelers leaves tracks everywhere.
It's very very static.
Hey, excuse me.
They showed this one like 3 times.
You're right, teacher. It's time for me to start a new life.
I am sincerely glad for you, child.
Isn't this the scene where he's like, yeah, I did human transmutation or something? Let's see, I think I just missed one. Nope, they just reused Adaxa being dead. There you go. This one was like Casterus' backstory.
Upon the town. Its wings were large enough to blot out the sun.
That's cool.
While its claws were sharp enough to rip the waves apart. It barged into the tall tower.
See, and then there's the second one.
It even settled.
It was like the princess in the dragon's stomach or whatever. The Nether. They showed this one a couple times.
Say that there is no difference between living.
Oh, I forgot about this. Is this Casterus killing someone? I'm just gonna assume that's what it is.
Triple darkness in this world. Everyone.
And then, okay, all right. So, let me complain about the way they use this animation, okay? So they said in their dev thing, they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna start incorporating the animations into the gameplay. It's like, cool, that's awesome. But then it just turns out that they just replayed the same animation that they released before the story came out. like it doesn't have any emotional impact when we all saw it and it's like out of context, like, you know, like a week ago. You know, it's like this would have hit so much more if it actually happened in the story. Like, why didn't they release it, like, I don't know, the next day or something, you know, or even like an hour after it came out in the story? Like, why did they spoil us ahead of time? Like, they know, like, this is the marketing team. Don't they know, like, people are gonna come and watch this? Like, it would have been cool to, like, see this in context. But no, we all saw it on YouTube. They did the same thing with Arlecchino. Yeah, they did that. Like, Arlecchino's entire story quest was, like, you know, about Arlecchino's backstory. And that would have hit more if we hadn't learned the whole thing in the animation, like, like a week before. You know, I can't believe they did it again. Are they stupid? Like, are they crazy? A slideshow of the short dude. HI3 doesn't get animated shorts for this, and then they fail spectacularly. Yeah, it's like, yeah, and I think fundamentally it's also like, in any case, like, yeah, I think this is an interesting little animation, but it also doesn't really happen at the climax of a moment. Like, this is my beef with this animated short and maybe some of the other ones is they'll make you be like, oh, I feel bad for this character. It makes you feel bad for Casterus. But like, it's not really the climax of a moment. Like, if we think back to the HI3 animated shorts, I don't know why they don't seem to understand this, but like, the HI3 animated shorts were really impactful, you know, pun intended, because they lined up with like the climax of the story arc. They came like right at the end when everything was really like building up, and so you felt like all of the emotions of the entire story arc in that moment. You know, this is just like, on the other hand, like this just establishes, wow, I'm sorry, I feel bad for you, Casterus, you know. And it looks good. It's just like it's marketing material. It's just marketing material. I feel more bad about Arya after Helia shot her leg. Yeah. Well, that moment is just so good because it speaks to a turning point in like Helia's life. You know, it's like, or Alter Helia's like life. You know, it's what's the word? It just shows how she would make such a crucial mistake, and it's like the moment of great sin. It's like it's a crucial moment. Is this really a crucial moment for Casterus? I mean, like in some ways, it's a peek into her life and the sadness that she experiences, but the thing is, like, we already knew this without this animation, right? Like, we already knew that Casterus would kill people by touching them, and we already knew that she was a lonely little wet cat. And like, yeah, that's sad. It's just like, this doesn't really define, to me, it doesn't really say anything that we didn't already know about Casterus. It's just giving it more flair, you know? I do think the Firefly animation is better for this, actually. Because if we take a look at Firefly's one is better than the Casterus one, in conveying what it needs to convey, because it connects to like how she joins, or like her joining with the, what's it called? This is like the third time I've forgotten it. The Stellaron Hunters. Like, it's like how she joined the Stellaron Hunters, right? Like, it makes such a big impact, and she's spotted out in space by Kafka, right? While the Casterus one doesn't connect to the greater plot. It doesn't really have anything to say about, like, okay, so what's Casterus's part as Chrysos heir, you know?
Whoever's still alive, cover me. I'm going for the swarm mother. Copy. Take it. What's this? Activate it when you see the signal.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just like the Chrysos heirs really just feel like a bunch of loosely connected characters who happen to be working on the same goal, rather than like a set of characters who have relationships with each other. And like, they can write in like, oh, they are all great friends and they all hang out in like the backstories and stuff like that. But like, it's one thing to just write it and say it happened, and then another thing to actually show us the moments where it happened, you know? And I don't want to even say that's a show don't tell, because they're not even telling that in the main story, you know? They're not even, like, even if they yapped it to us in the main story, that would make a difference. But like, I don't feel like they do that too much. Like, I guess you could say there's the moment where Tribby and the Tribbies are all like, we're making a nice gift for Casterus, and like, that's cute. But like, the Tribbies are like a bunch of children, and that's kind of just already in their character to be very nice to other people. You know, it's like, and it's in a way like a little bit surface level to me. It's just like kids being nice, and everyone loves the kids, but it's not like a particularly deep relationship. You know, I don't know. We're so negative. We are so negative. Wow, look at our energy. It's awful. Let's look at some I don't think I'm getting to this story chapter, am I? Let's forget about it. Let's forget about it. I think I had some other things in mind what I was thinking about earlier today. Come back to the playlist and see if I can remember anything. I don't think I have reacted to some of the new trailers lately. Like, let's see. Now that we're getting to the end of this Ruimu arc, I kind of want to take a look at the version trailers that we've had. Still laughing at the part where there's a block of stone ahead and Finon adds tribute to time reverse so we can get out. Oh boy. I guess it starts here, right? Drifting, dreaming. I feel like the entire energy of part 2 changed when this trailer drops. Because suddenly we're in the world of like the computer, right? Or we're in this awareness of the computer. Bring Senna back. You know, I'm also suddenly thinking about Entropy's motivation looking for Senadina is actually somewhat similar to the idea of like the travelers looking for their sibling, right? But of course, in Genshin, traveler looking for their sibling is like, you know, the smallest of plot threads that they'll come back to never, right? You know, they'll never come back to it. They pay it lip service maybe once a year at best. While this Senadina situation is like they're keeping it in the forefront. They're keeping it fresh, you know, and we're learning so much about their relationship. And at the very least, we were with Senadina for at least an entire arc beforehand. So like, you know, we do have a idea of like a character that we want to get back, you know.
数据录入成功，我们出发吧。别等我下班。
I love Teresa's like song it's even sleepy sounding. The way they like use that little whistle instrument to like it sounds like falling asleep, you know. Silly. Next is Vita. This is the beginning of the Tenshu War. They really like that the Vita like leitmotif They play it all throughout this entire trailer. What I think is so funny about like the misdirection of I always have this commentary on like the trailers that the Hoyo games make, and HSR probably has the worst trailers out of all of them, because all they do is like big sweeping shots of the new area, and then they just like take cutscenes from the actual story and like, you know, fake spoil everything, and like they don't really make custom little animations like HI3 does. Like this entire trailer and most trailers are basically like animations that they made specifically for the version trailer. It's not like from they're like recreated versions of something that happened in the story, you know. I'm sorry, I have to see what was in the ground there for a second. It's just Langzhou. They do some misdirection here. They make it seem like Lantern's like hunting the main characters again, but she was actually on their same side. And so it makes you think about how much Vita is actually manipulating these moments when like this is the scene where they're dealing with the thieves, I suppose, and like Lantern is there to come and help us. But then you see Vita here, like she's actually a part of this scene, but she's not. I quite like Lantern, yeah. And okay, sorry, the scene of I think this little composition is really important. So we're going to talk about Bailing for a second. I've made note before that I think the fact that Bailing has these two buns is very significant, because in some way I feel like Baiji projects Songchue onto his younger sister, you know? And of course, you know, his memory of her in the Jade Plaque, and then there's Songchue next. And like this entire chapter recontextualized the relationship between Baiji and Songchue as one that was like affected by his motivations from his sister. We didn't really know what Baiji's motivations were until this moment, and it just shows like Songchue was like a new Bailing for him in some ways. Like she filled that hole in his heart. I won't say like romantically, but like familially, you know. And you know, like it truly speaks to like why he could not kill her in the end, in the Seven Shoes arc. Like he just couldn't kill her because like he reminds him of his sister, you know. Like how could he sacrifice his sister? I don't know. Part 2 is just so good because it feels like such a genuine sequel, I think. I do feel it's very faithful to everything we established in part 1, like thematically, as well as like the characters and the way it's progressing. Like it feels like a natural progression of everything that we had in part 1 while still managing to be its own thing, you know? And like I think they are. Here's the thing, okay. I feel like Penacony and Amphorius and Xianzhou all tried to recreate elements from HI3 that existed before, and like they're being way more and more on the nose about it. Like Penacony was like basically it took a lot of the same themes from Finality Arc, right? But it feels kind of surface level to me. It's like referential. It's like, hey, you guys remember this, and it means nothing to like the average player, you know. While on the other hand, in part 2, like yes, it's about bubble universes. Yes, there's like the shoes who might remind you a little bit of the Flame Chasers. Yes, like there is a Samsara here, and in some way the Mars computer is very similar to Project Stigma. But it makes sense. One for one, it makes sense for Honkai 3 to have like this a same kind of plot element, happen in part 2. And 2, I do feel like in a lot of ways, the way part 2 is using these story elements from part 1, they kind of flip it on its head. Like it's like they often will do a reversal. Like one of the theories that I truly liked is that like the Mars computer and like what we're doing on Mars is like Project Stigma in reverse. This is a world that has been consumed by the web of stories, like Stigma, and instead we're trying to bring it from that state back into like the real world. Whether or not it actually goes like that is one thing to see, but it feels like the story is moving this direction. It's like, oh, these people have all been fictionalized, but yet they're still real to me. That's like that to me. That's like the storyline of like the Mars computer, and I feel like that's a reversal of what happened in Project Sigma. And yeah, I think that's pretty probable given Entropy and Vegeta have gone to the real world. Yeah. Still get pissed off when the shoes get called Flame Chaser wannabes when they're not, then see people call Crisis Heirs better Flame Chasers. Yeah, yikes. Yeah, like the shoes are like, I think they do have parallels to the Flame Chasers. I think it's intentional, but they have a completely different dynamic than the Flame Chasers. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing for the shoes to be like the Flame Chasers, actually, though, because if we think about part 2, like obviously things have changed, but if we think about part 2 in the beginning as kind of like a reintroduction for new players into Honkai Impact, like let's say they started part 2 fresh, I felt in a lot of ways the Longcho arc, the Seven Shoe arc, was like it was like a greatest hits album of like all the moments that we really loved about part 1. It's like Flame Chasers are there, Hersher is like in the center of all of it, there's like the Honkai Beast, the sacrifice, and of course the theme of love. It's like every element that defined what was important to us about Honkai 3, fight for all that's beautiful in the world, all of that like comes into focus in the first arc of part 2. It was like saying, yeah, we're telling the same kind of story, or like you're going to get the same kind of moments that you had in the past, but things are going to be a little bit different now. It's going to be new characters, it's going to be fresh, and it was okay to do that for a first arc. Like it's totally okay, in my opinion, to do that for a first arc that's supposed to get like new players in. Like let's say someone didn't play through Elysian Realm, didn't play through Finality, didn't play through any of the later arcs. If they played through Longzhou arc, like they would have felt all of the emotions that you would feel throughout all of part 1. And like, of course the part 1 moments are unparalleled in a lot of ways, and like they're excellent, but I do think like I said, it feels like a greatest hits album in the first arc, at least all the way to the end. And then right at the pinnacle of the feel good of the first arc, we get Songsha back, and we're gonna go to like the dinner together. It all gets torn from us, and Vita's like, it's not, everything is not like you knew it was, and everything, like your life is a lie, and Entropy like loses everything, and that is like a very Honkai Impact thing to do. And it's like it I don't know, it's just very true to the twists and turns that we felt through all of part 1, but it's different. It doesn't feel like it's just rehashing the moments we had before, or if it is like reusing some of the tropes that have been used in the past, like they're using them in a way that doesn't feel like it's referential. It's genuine to the growth that each of the characters has. Speaking of your emotional moments, what are your favorite in HI3? I like Siegfried's scene in Apocalypse, along with the various Flame Chaser partings. If pulling the trigger to save the entire world, goodbye to Flame Chaser, etc. For me, I think the hardest I ever cried was in the Flame Chaser farewell. But like other than that, like I really liked the moment of the crowning of the Herrscher of Origin. So there's the moment where May is walking in through, not through Origin Station, but through the blank space, and starts to run, and then she reminisces over her old history, and then she yells out for Alicia, and then Alicia appears, and then it plays like the Origin Station music, and they have their little reunion, and then May gets crowned as the Herrscher of Origin. I think I loved that sequence. That sequence was really good. Of course, like any of the animated shorts, like are really, really excellent. I think for the longest time, my favorite one was actually Starfall. And then that would shift as more and more came out. You know, the Flame Scion one got to be really good, and like Final Lesson, or not Final Lesson, Because of You, and the Finality one. He's saying like a broken recorder, but May going to ER has a purpose, while Asterix was going out before he says not. Yeah, like exactly. This is a thing. They're recreating the Elysian realm in Amphorius because they want to capitalize on the same kind of runaway success that Elysian realm had. Right? People loved the Elysian realm, but from the very beginning, the foundation of the Elysian realm was not about the Flame Chasers. It was about May. You know. Like, May was a character we cared about, and May was a character who was hurting, right? May was in a lot of emotional distress when she entered into the Elysian realm, and then she came out of it completely changed as a person, you know? And I don't think it will be like that for the for the Trailblazer. Like, the Trailblazer and the Astral Express crew didn't come to Amphorius needing to be changed or looking for an answer to something that burned deep within their souls, you know? Like, all that could possibly come out of Amphorius is like, okay, let's just say, I'm going to say it's not going to happen because I don't think they have the guts, but like, let's just say every single character in Amphorius permanently died, like the Flame Chasers, okay? I don't think they're going to do that. But like, if they did, how does the Trailblazer come away from that? They're just going to be like, I'll never forget the Amphorius people. But unlike May, where like losing the Flame Chasers was all she ever talked about for like a while, and that it influenced her desire to become a teacher, you know, and she like, that's basically the end of her story. Like, the Trailblazer going through Amphorius, even if everybody dies, and even if they say, I'll remember all you guys, like, they're still going to be the same goofy person, like, going on from here. Like, we're probably still only in the beginning parts of the Star Rail story, you know? Astral Express crew will leave Amphorius with new power-ups. Yeah, new power-ups, whatever. Like, they'll just get new power-ups later again, you know? Like, is it really... It's just a stepping stone, you know? Elysian Realm really also, it works because it's a penultimate arc, you know? It's like an arc that set up the past. It gave context to everything that ever happened in Honkai 3, and it also sets up the final arc. It gives every motivation you need to know about Kevin, right? Everything that you need to know about the war with the Honkai, and it's very central to like the actual like conflict, you know, and it gave answers to the conflict. Maybe they'll do that in Amphorius. Maybe they'll be like, you know, Cyrene is the key to understanding the Eon War or some stupid crap like that. Will they? Who knows? Will they commit? Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. Wow, complaining. Anyway, we were looking at these trailers. Let's look at my favorite character, Sparkle. Sparkle, who did nothing. Okay, we've talked about the foreshadowing that's in this trailer. They when they did the dev stream for this, they were like, "Oh, there are secrets in this trailer about what's going to happen." And of course, that secret was like what happened to Coralie. Was Helia there when you took a walk past? No, she was okay. Like, okay, I do like this little cut here. They show like Helia with like a scratch going through her. Yeah, whatever. Actually, I do think it's funny here in this trailer. It actually gives you the impression that Coralie is like the main driver of this story arc, because Helia doesn't have any lines in it. Hi, Sparkle. You know how this makes it seem like Sparkle and Vita were gonna actually have a confrontation? Like, and instead we got it in an animation that had nothing to do with the story. Yeah, goodbye, Sparkle. You have nothing to say. How many times they gonna remix the Sparkle song? Oh, they love that Sparkle song. Sorry, to complain one more time about Sparkle. Like, you know, Sparkle comes into the part 2 story out of nowhere, and then it's just like, why don't we just blow the whole thing up? Ha 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 ha. And it's like, bro, shut up. Like, you're not funny here in this world that is incredibly serious right now. It's like, like, Sparkle, weird. You know, it's like, I remember the complaint that we had at the time was that, you know, Sparkle drops and all that HSR lore stuff happens in chapter 5, and like all Twitter could talk about was like, oh wow, Sparkle and Vita, it's like, wow, bad women together, yo, Sparkle's here, like, isn't that crazy? And then they're like, wow, like the Memo Keeper, and it's like, dude, chapter 5 like actually was really interesting for its own reasons, like revealing like talking about the Tenshu War, like what, like Coralie getting into that fight with Sakurai, like getting the backstory on Baiji. Like there were genuine like great emotional moments. And like, what did people talk about? The Sparkle stuff, which has absolutely nothing to do with the story. I feel like this trailer goes so hard. Okay, what I like about sorry, this little part right here, it might be a little hard to see because of encoding, but all of the strands and dots are like in chaos. And then when Durandal comes in to talk, everything comes into alignment. You know, it's like. I quite like that. It's like the Valkyrie. I'm gonna say Durandal doesn't necessarily represent herself here. She represents the um the Valkyrie way, the Jedi way. Like, you know, the one thing that ultimately keeps Helia tethered and keeps Helia from going off the deep end is that she remembers the Valkyrie way and like the values that the Valkyries had. And of course that's the difference between Helia Alter and our Helia, is that Helia Alter lived in a world where the Valkyries didn't exist anymore. They became exterminated, and they're like there was no beauty left in her world, while, you know, our Helia is inheriting the world that Kiana and the gang saved, you know. And so that's what Durandal here, bringing like the path forward, I suppose, because you could say in this one, this like chaotic, like Helia's unsure about where to go in her life, and that's why everything is like chaotic, while when she understands like the Valkyrie values, everything becomes clear and it comes in alignment.
在穷尽一切能做到的事之前，我都绝不会放弃。
And I think they highlight her eyes a lot in this trailer, which, you know, the eyes become a very important motif for her in this chapter and as going forward. I like the energy in this trailer totally changes when Durandal comes in. It's suddenly like really high energy. What's the joke that you always make, Momo? It's like, check out this awesome move. It like double time, it like speeds up.
并肩作战，瞧我的！哪里跑？
It slaps. Like, this is so good.
速战，速决！
I like wish it was longer because it sounds so cool.
吃过，停消。
All that, and then we have Dreamseeker here being sad. I remember, like, I just love this. Like, Dreamseeker having a moment with Durandal, and like Dreamseeker like developing her relationship with other characters, and like this moment where Dreamseeker had like her anxieties come forward, and then Durandal like also talks about her anxieties. It was very like humanizing, you know. Having to see what a Saint Freya education of being a Valkyrie with a purpose and not a tool for battle. Yeah, exactly. It was like really funny, like Durandal being like, huh, "What would Rita do, bro?" And actually, I love that Durandal's like, "What would Rita do?" That's what she said in this chapter. But then also during this chapter is when Helia has a flashback, or maybe it's last chapter. Was it last chapter? It was the chapter before this. Helia has like a flashback to the words that Rita actually said to her. And if you remember, Rita says to her, like Helia, don't freak out about your inadequacy. Like one day technology will catch up to like give you the same powers that we all have, you know? And Helia doesn't really understand that at the time. And this arc is about building up that like that idea for Helia and helping her see like it's like those powers would become necessary, but they weren't like just having the power is not enough. You know, with great power comes great responsibility. You've heard it a million times, but like, you know, Helia Alter had the power but didn't have the heart. You know, literally, right? She had her heart removed. While our Helia, you know, is coming to understand that the power without the heart is not going to make her into the Durandal that she wants to be. You know. Let's see, Kiana trailer now. I remember watching some other streamer who was like going through the trailers, or they were like a new player or something. They're like, is this like old content? And then they saw like Kiana was in it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is right. And then they thought that like the Kiana stuff was like the main event, and then they thought the Layla stuff was like a side event.
美丽的黑夜，才是最温柔、最绚丽的风景啊！藏匿于黑夜之中的暗影。
They don't even hold hands like that in the actual quest.
它从不美丽。
一刻也不曾忘却那被我们视作赐福的绝望诅咒。
Okay, what I really now I'm like really thinking about it. You see the shadow is growing. I didn't notice it before, but the shadow grows with Layla's like silhouette growing in response. Like that's really cool, actually. I didn't notice that before. And then it's just Kiana hanging out. Which is fine too. I mean, we love Kiana, right? I think Kiana and the gang have a very well-deserved retirement. They worked hard for their happy ending. I think this is one of the things I do appreciate about what happens in part 2, is that Kiana and her friends, for the most part, are enjoying the fruits of their labors. You know, I think they've been very careful not to take away part 1's happy ending, you know? Because I feel like if you just suddenly start affecting the old characters in heavy ways, it like too soon, it kind of takes away from a happy ending. I think about let's talk about Star Wars again. This is like the third time we talked about Star Wars this stream. But like they came back to the original trilogy characters in Star Wars later on and then did terrible things to them, and like retroactively it actually harms the ending of the original trilogy, because you're like, okay, for all of the accomplishments that our characters had, like it all just turned to like crap. Like that sucks, you know? And like you can't help but think about how terrible things are going to turn out for them in the future when you go back and watch the original stuff. And I'm glad that they're not making that mistake per se in part 2. Like Kiana and her friends, for the most part, like they're letting them exist as mentor figures, and they're still like going through their own little things here and there, but for the most part, like they're just there to advise and to they're like, you know, they're mature, they're adults, they're the adults in the room, and it's not at the expense of the happy ending that they deserved, you know. But like it's not in conflict with the seriousness of everything that's going on right now, you know. I know some people will complain like, how come Teresa and Durandal didn't, like, you know, mourn over Corley's death? And to me it's like they explain very clearly that like it's not over till it's over, and they're not going to get into hopeless mode until it's really, really over. It's like as long as they feel like they can still do something, like they're going to keep working at it, you know. And is that harsh? Maybe, but when you're these characters, you know, like I think it makes sense for them to keep moving forward, and I don't think that's them being cold. And besides, I don't think the point is to make them mourn. It was Helia's mourning that we were processing through. And if you think about it, like if everybody else just sat there and like mourned all of it, and like we really sat on that moment, I don't think it will work out for later, you know. It would leave a strange taste in my mouth, in the way that like now having a funeral for Tingyun back in the Xianzhou arc feels very strange to me. Like, you know, you know, they spent all that time being like, Tingyun, I miss Tingyun, and then not that it being a whole lot of nothing, you know.
足够可靠。好像听到有人在喊我的名字了，那就上吧。
Yeah, I could not pull this Kiana. Like, look how. Let me go all the way back to the menu. Look at this. My pity was at 11. I couldn't pull her. It's okay. And then we're gonna be caught up when we see this Sushang one. Look how many videos Castorus gets. Oh boy. I know some people are like bothered. Oh, how come Sushang and Kiana are not really a part of it, as well as like I guess you could say Sparkle. Like, how come they're not a part of like the main story really? And it's like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, we've always had Captain Verse characters, you know, who took up slots during the storyline, and it's fine because then the event can be about the event character, and the main story can be about the main characters, you know? This chapter was so good for me. I don't know. I know some other people might have some other opinions, but I really enjoyed this chapter. And then Sushang's here. I just having a great time. I definitely feel like Sushang was dropped at this moment as a nod to HSR players rather than to us, but I'm still happy with her. I mean, obviously Sushang's one of my favorite characters. You know, they made her a streamer, just like Good Night Fun. Obsessed with food. This is like CG is crazy, dude. Like, all the emotion that this carries is so good. I wonder if they'll go further with the event idea. Imagine if they implement a part 2 Alicia battlesuit with a PE event alongside it. I don't know what they could say with a PE event. It's my thing. I've always thought that they could do an exploration of like the war a little bit more, and I'm sure yeah, it's already you know, content that's tread before, but I'm sure people would love to see like the day-to-day how it went down and stuff, even if it's sad or something, you know. HRT Sushang would probably beat the entire Lofu by herself. Let's see. I feel like there's something else I wanted to look at. Oh right, the cutscenes. I've also been thinking lately about the first couple cutscenes that show up, and with future context now that a lot of the themes have continued forward. First, let's look at the part 2 reveal. Part 2 reveal and the part 2 version trailer, and then maybe the dance. Okay. Welcome back. Hi, Delway. So I like in retrospect, they're like I wasn't sure what to think about the canonicity of this trailer, and I think some details have changed here and there. But one thing I will say about Chapter 8, this is a small spoiler, but like they do mention that the Hyperion 11 did in fact pass through an asteroid field.
指令长赫利亚，确认。雷达天线确认，着陆引擎确认，自动驾驶确认，着陆开始。着陆舱确认分离。着陆引擎对接完成。
So, you know, them having their little problems in the landing, like they reference that in Chapter 8. Okay, and then, of course, there's this... Senadine is the first character that we see in this trailer. And it's like she's the gateway to all of Mars. And if anything, this makes me think... So they talk about when Senadina and her friends first come to the planet. Like, Mars was actually already dead. And she, like, brought new life to it. So in some ways, this is also Senadina bringing new life to Mars in the first place. And then you can see all of that becoming encapsulated in the dodecahedron, which represents the 12 constellations of the astral ring. And then this was like... at first I thought this was just about Mars all being bubble universes, but the clear, like, data imagery here is, like, leading into, you know, Mars is a computer, right? It's a virtual space. And so, yeah, you mentioned the musical motif, so let's go back and listen real quick again. This, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They always play that, like, motif every time it has to do with Senadina or the Astral Ring. And I tried to make a thought of what this was supposed to represent, but I think it's just, since it represents the Astral Ring, and then the dodecahedron turns into like a, I don't know, like a star dodecahedron. And then we've entered into the simulation, and then who do we see? The Dream Seeker. I can't remember, I think we decoded what this time was, but I can't remember. They changed her face from how it looked here. You know, this trailer makes it look like she's a girl with attitude, but she's really not. So, you know, once again, the old Dream Seeker face is kind of a little bit dead fish. I'm glad they adjusted it. It needed a little bit more work, I think. And so, of course, when this was first revealed, like, I thought the idea of the anchor being like the motif of Mars was really cool, because like we had just spent all of 1.5 and then the finale of Captain Verse talking about, once again, like the importance of ether anchors, right? And then like Senadina being a character connected to ether anchors, and it just really fit the quantum setting really well. Sea of Quanta, yeah. Actually, just the entire motif of an anchor in the sea is like, it's like such a good visual indicator of like an idea that exists, and it matches with the theme of a sea of quanta or a sea of data, you know. I remember I was trying to determine the setting here when we first saw this. This is supposed to be Langzhou, but it's just really interesting because it appears as this very Victorian type city, but then there are elements here that are very, you know, Chinese. So it's like, I can't remember what they said before, but it's like China at the turn of the century. And I remember trying to understand if Sangchua's finger touching here had any significance, but I can't really say. Now, what I think is really interesting is that there is a moon here in Beta Langzhou, but Mars doesn't have a moon, so that's something to think about. Or Mars has 2 moons, but they're not spherical, big and spherical like this. So this is something to really take into mind for the Martian setting. And of course, final Langzhou doesn't have a moon like that either. And there's Donahue. I thought it was very strange to feature for the drop of this song. Now they show off these 2 characters, and it's just very funny because they present them here like they're villainous characters, and then we meet Litos, and at first they're like, actually Litos is actually kind of a nice guy, right? And then we later learn in we later learn that he's actually not all that nice. And then of course over here is Perception, you know, but we think it's like, you just think it's Sangchue, you know. But yeah, it's like they faked us out on both of these characters. It's very funny. Another thing is you can see here there's a motif of a lot of wheels and sphere and well, I'll just call them wheels and cogs, which are very reminiscent of the theme of the Langzhou arc, which is the Wheel of Destiny. And the you know, their astral ring, of course, is the what is it called again? Sorry, I'm totally forgetting. It's called, yeah, Wheel of Destiny. Oh. I remember I thought that Sangchue had like powers to see the future or something here, but that's not really it. And then I thought this was like a dragon or something, but it's just Donahue. But yeah, I think they didn't really make it so clear that both, you know, well, maybe they did. I was like, Senna and Entropy being at the center of all of it. Next is the version trailer. Yeah, sounds like Doom music. It fits really well, you know, Doom music, since Doom takes place on Mars, you know. I think that's an intentional reference, in my opinion. I always thought that Dreamseeker's little communicator here looks a lot like the Dragon Ball radar that Bulma has, which I guess you could say makes some sense because what is it? They're trying to gather the astral rings in some way or another. What? Speaking of the astral rings, I'm having this thought that what if the different astral rings, it's actually the same ring, but in different points in time? You know, what if the constellations are different time points rather than separate astral rings? You know, so it's like a uniting of different timelines. I don't know. You can see here, Senadina's got a little line. This is the line when she touches the anchor of Apocalypse for the first time. What I think is interesting here, you can see that they're monitored this whole time. And who does it show next? It's Perception and Sangcha, right? It's like Perception is the one who's monitoring everything. Of course, we couldn't know that Perception was a character. We thought this cut seems like it's just about Sangchue. You know, like Sangchue is the one who's suspicious, but it's actually this orb. Okay, so there's this motif here where this like choir comes in. I like to call it sort of the Seven Shoes motif. If we go back to go back here. Oh, why is my computer lagging? It's probably because it's showing a character. 1 second. If we come here into Seven Venerable Shoes, you'll see the moment where Sangchue summons. It's the same like choir motif when she summons the shoes. And then again later when she completes the astral ring and summons this. Yeah, one of those things that you only really notice if you watch these things religiously. It's not the same melody, but it is the same like motif in some ways, like the instrumentation. Man, we've really come to love these characters, huh? Like, this cast is very strong. And it took time. But, they have very, very well-defined personalities. And relationships. Our favorite A rank. Okay, I've got my theory about Coralie. So Coralie keeps joking about like being the Dark Lord Coralie. I actually wonder if Coralie's story arc will be about her becoming a Dark Lord in some way. They've said it too many times for it to just not be like a serious, you know? It's like, you know, Perception kept making the joke about burying the cast, and then it turned out Perception was the bad guy, right? And you know, like I don't think some of these idol references are just throwaways. It's also like, you know, Helia being joked, Helia's an A rank, haha, and then it turns out that that's something that gives her like big anxiety, right? Like, I think some of these character motifs, especially in these early chapters, are gonna play out to be a big deal. One other thing is that Senadina says at the end of or halfway through 3EX, he says, when all 5 of us are together, I think we can do anything. It's like everything that Senadina says, almost everything that Senadina says in the first arc is extremely cryptic when you go back and read it again. Yeah. There's a pretty cool nod in Senadina's character impression trailer. Well, let's take a look. I'm not sure what you're thinking of specifically, but I'll point out things that I noticed from this.
ビルの100階に駅があるなんて。この街はいろいろ工夫されてるんだね。ねえ、夢追い人、ここから飛び降りる動画を撮ったら人気出るかな。それならテレビと同じように目立ったところに。
And then of course, like, no one notices her here at all, disappearing. Like, it's just such a if you really think about it, Senna disappearing by itself is like, you know, that's her character trait. I guess I could talk about Senadina's themes in this trailer. Some of the symbolism that exists in her. So one, of course, is the anchor, and we talked already about the anchor being really important for bubble universes. The ether anchor is like a power source that serves as the foundation for each of the bubble worlds, and so Senadina in some way creates the anchors, or is the anchor. Another thing is that now why she has yo-yos. I think there are two things to this. One is that yo-yos as a circular device represent a cycle. You could say a loop, which is like the samsara that the planet is now in. It's constantly stuck in loops. Another thing is that yo-yos are held together with a string, and we know that string, like I mentioned, strings are important because in Salt Snow Holy City, when Susanna was holding the ether anchors of the bubble universe, they said that she was holding them together with like a rope or a string. So it's like the idea of samsaras, the string that holds together the anchors, and then the anchors themselves are brought together in Senadina's like kit. There's also, of course, her, what is it? The resonance anchor that appears. It's like, I don't know, something about cooperation or something causes resonation or something like that. I don't know. It's just like Senadina is a character who relies on other characters to work.
Like shooting star, you can never resist. Remember, just my basement. You might clear it, and the ceiling could be a limit. I'm coming to you, we're upside down. Suddenly, we can't stay but turn. Yo, to keep me turned. Bring me up, yeah, we don't stop, don't stop. Get better free, better all mine. Made my own glass, never rewind. Speed it up, use my whole life, yeah. So keep your.
What's interesting about the timeline of this little thing here is Songchua being here is a bit like, when did this happen? But we don't think about that too hard. Because theoretically, if this canonically happened, it should have happened like when in the period between Songchua's death and when they were just chilling. It's either that or it's during the time when they were just running around exploring, but they wouldn't have had this much downtime. They only had one day after all. I'm also thinking about this song being about keep your eyes on me. Of course, because she's gonna disappear, right? She's disappearing and people forget her. Right? She's so cute. Of course, they reference later on in Chapter 3 EX that Senna and Dreamseeker have been doing swimming classes. Cute. What's the last one we're gonna look at? The dance. Okay. So the dance, I always come back to it because there are just so many things that you can take out of this. So if you think about this as a parallel to Layla and Senadina's story, Senadina is the one who first leads Layla in. The last shot of Sena's trailer is the same scene where Layla first appears, except it's in the daytime, not the nighttime. You mean like the location? Oh, right here. You mean? Good observation. So you can see, to me, this is like Senadina showing Layla the dance, right? Teaching her the powers. And then she lets her go, right? Yeah, I've taught you everything you need to know, and lets her go. And then she begins her dance to transcribe things. I'll talk about that in a second, but before we go forward some more, I'm gonna go back. And now we're going to observe and listen to the music, because the music also is telling a story. So let's listen to the instruments. First, there are two instruments in this first section. There is the violin, or some string instrument. I don't know. Is it a violin? Is it viola? Is it cello? It's probably, I think, a viola. Maybe it's just a violin. But it's the piano and the violin. And so it starts with just the piano, which is like the one instrument. It's Senadina, right? And it's actually, if I think about it, a piano is an instrument that is like has multiple voices. You know, there are 88 keys. It like has a whole wide array of sounds that it can make, while a violin usually is only playing one note at a time, which when you think about a violin representing Layla, you know, and there's this duet that they do. I guess it's more of a viola because it's really deep. And you think about the viola is also a instrument that has a very dark tone, which lines up with the shadow of Layla. So then another thing is now it's switched to a completely different instrument here. So the first part of this dance is a viola, or like a I'm gonna keep saying viola. I don't know if it's a cello. It's like a deeper instrument than a violin, right? It's a completely different set of notes. Now, when they make contact here, and then it switches now to a different instrument entirely. It's a violin, which to me represents entropy. She is a brighter version of the cello, the viola. A completely new instrument, but in the same family. Okay, now we're in the dance. And everything changes. And I feel like in some ways this also represents Senadina's death, or her original death. She's off to do her own dance, and she starts weaving this aura around her, and you'll see if you look really closely in it, these aren't like snowflakes or anything. They're actually letters in the or characters of the Martian alphabet. And I guess it's not really an alphabet, they're just Martian characters. Which, if we think about it, is very similar, or is like transcription. Which like we learned a whole lot about transcription from Mistalin back in Finality, that she would transcribe human lives into Project Stigma and weave the dream of Project Stigma, right? So you can see here, and Senadina back in the prologue of part 2 talked about an error in her transcription occurring when Coralie and Helia came in, and so this is probably a reference to her transcription. I made a print of this little turn right here. I 1 second, let me pull it up. I'm gonna be a little bit self-promoting right now. I thought this the way this looked was really interesting, so I drew it. Let's see if I can find where it is. It was a while ago. Yeah, there we go. A little bit of self-promotion here on my own channel, but I quite liked how it looked. So now, of course, there's the 12 astral rings here. One of the things to note in here is that the constellations have not appeared on the dodecahedron, and I do think what's interesting about the dodecahedron is that it's like there is another one inside of it. Although I can't quite tell what its shape is. It looks not quite like another dodecahedron on the inside, but a hexagon. I don't know. So you can see that the stars then make a mark over each of these lands. I think we missed one. Go back. So the astral ring symbol, where is it here? Is it? I actually don't remember. It's here somewhere. The astral ring is on the wheel on this one. The astral ring is on the tree. It's here in the field. And so then there's that dun 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 song that's playing again. That we heard back in the other trailer. I mean, the astral ring is right there to see, so. This one is right here. Now, will we? Who knows what all this stuff is? We still don't know. It's been over a year. I don't think there's a visible astral ring here in Longzhou, as far as I can tell. The astral ring here is under where Senadina is dancing. You can see it just barely here. I'm sure if we really compared the textures, we could actually know exactly which ones they are. The only problem is, yeah, I don't know. It's like, we haven't been to any of these places, and we haven't seen all the astral ring types, so there's this one's right here. This one is, I think, on this rock. My quality is a little bit low, but I think it's right here. I'm trying to remember where it was on this one. I think it's probably here on this rock too. What's interesting is that they did mention in the dev stream for when part 2 first came out that Mars has blue sunrises. and sunsets. So they tried to show that here with how blue the sun is coming up. And then this astral ring is just here under this rock formation. Now, something I want to take note of, and this is something I was thinking about once again today, is that you can see that there's this moon shape that this moon seems to be crashing into the planet, which is something that we it's like a motif that is like all a part of Honkai Impact, right? The moon. But Mars doesn't have a circular moon like this, or a spherical moon like this. One thing that I learned about, or I had not learned about for the first time, but I stumbled upon again earlier today, was the Roche limit, which is astrophysics thing. It's when a moon passes a point of gravity of the planet it orbits, where it can no longer maintain its own internal gravity and begins to collapse under the tidal forces. And usually what will happen is that the moon will then become a ring around the planet. This is like in the case of Saturn with its rings. They are the remains of like a moon that orbited in the past. And it makes me think, well, there isn't a ring that exists around Mars, but there is a ring in the story, the astral ring. And we know that the moon can usually be connected with finality, and we know that Senadina is connected to finality. So what if in some way this moon is connected to the formation of the astral ring? Who knows? Now, the emotion I first had when I was going through this for the first time was that it was like, this is a world that Senadina had seen and knew about all of the history of Longqiu, or not Longqiu, of Luoxing, everything that happened on Mars, and all the calamity and destruction that befell this world. You know, she's like aware of all of it. And you know, that's a very emotional thing, like the destruction of a planet. And then the very end of it, she's entrusting this to the Dream Seeker. Like, I trust you with, you know, everything about these people. And then, you know, now the astral rings are all encoded on the dodecahedron. Now, I don't know what to make of these lines yet. The sea is singing with the voice of fire. I'm sure this has some kind of significance, but I don't know what to make of it just yet. And then what happens after this scene, of course, is that Senadina says that they've now made a covenant, and a covenant to save this world. Now, I want to talk about a couple things. One, she talks about, so everything about what happens here in the Crown of the World is actually extremely, it's like couched in very religious things, I suppose. This is like, in religious studies, there's something called a theophany. It's like the revelation of God, which can appear in a vision, which is like a dream. Okay. And so God is being revealed to Entropy, right? And another part of this ritual is the marriage ritual. This scene is in some ways a marriage. It is like well, what can I say other than, first they start the ritual with the dance, and then the ritual comes together in a covenant, and then Senadina bestows upon the main character a ring. What else is that symbolized than marriage, right? And in some ways, if we think about it, all of the people of Mars are in some way the children of Senadina, because she created this world, and of Layla, who also was the creator of this world. So yeah, It's like through this marriage, they're going to save all of their children, you know, and that's what's being entrusted through this ring. You know, I don't know. There's like, I feel like so much you can get out of this if you, depending on whatever lens you can go through. Another thing about theophanies is that often God will reveal like the nations of the world as part of it, and so these are like different parts of Mars in some way or another. Now, I think you're talking about, do you think we'll go to all these areas? I think the intention was to show Mars as a world that once thrived and give us the impression we were in a living, breathing world. Make the whole we're in a computer twist more impactful. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to go to all of these places. But thematically, I think there is some significance to this. I do think we will visit the 4 continents at the very least. I do think in some, like, I don't know if we'll be able to visit each one of these locations. Some of them, I don't think the concept is very strong, to be quite honest. Like, a farm, this, like, crater lake, that's cool. That's not really a unique place. I mean, these big trees are kind of cool. I want to see that. This is just more, like, I don't know, amber fields, amber mountains. This is some beach. This is, like, a volcano. Like, it's cool and all, but I can't say that they're really strong settings. Some of the ones later on are a little bit stronger, like this ice castle, are kind of interesting. I want to see if they have something to do with that. And they've made references to the 4 continents that exist on Mars. So I do think we'll be able to see more as time goes on. I don't think all of them will be seen. Maybe these ones that have buildings will be locations, I think. Like, I think this is a little too elaborate to just be, like, the concept here is like maybe a little, like, really strong. this like ice castle, like, I think they do intend to come at least here. This is just some canyon. Like, what is this? It's nothing. This is kind of interesting. There's some really ancient looking ruins. I could see them exploring a place similar to this. So out of all of these locations, really only like 2 of them like have buildings. Maybe 3 if you count Langzhou. So I think we'll probably visit the ones that at least have buildings, because I think they have an idea behind these things. I think seeing the zebras there is like a sign. To me, it was like a sign like, oh, this is not an alien world. This is a world like the Earth, you know? Seems like the ruins of the ice castle. Well, let's take a look again. I could kind of see it. I mean, if you think about the idea of like a timeline and then it's past, what if it's with, you know, what if like the next area we go to is like a modern area, like something in the same parallel as like Oxia and 100 years later Langzhou, and then one is like the 100 years earlier version of that area, you know? Kind of reminds me of Majora's Mask. Yeah, is it the same? I can't really say. Interesting thought if it is, but yeah. Anyway, this is very cool. Don't you think part 2 is very cool? Yeah. I have anything else to say? Let's see. Perception, eat it.
Goめんね、カクおばさん。あんたも 死ぬのが怖いみたいだね。
Wow, very sad. I miss Sungchue. Okay, anyway, I didn't really play any of this, but I don't think I'm gonna extend out my stream time any more than what I have right now. It's pretty late anyway, so we'll be back tomorrow. I don't think I'm gonna procrastinate this any more than I already am. So we'll be back tomorrow. And we will see what happens. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I can finish this event. I think what I'll do is I'll stream earlier in the day. I think not a night stream, but a afternoon stream tomorrow. Okay. Anyway, thanks for joining. We can try to find a somebody to raid, right? That's good etiquette. Anyone playing this darn game? This person is playing chapter 5. We'll raid them.
That would be correct.
EU player. Wow, isn't it late? Yeah, I hope to see you again. I'm gonna try to commit to. I say this every time, but we're gonna have some level of commitment. Some level of commitment to regular streaming again. I will probably do some art streams too.
She could hear you.
Where is my chat so I can actually slash raid Kaline. I'm not gonna say daily, but I will try to stream 3 times a week. And if not 3, then at least 1. It has to be at least 1. Okay. Tap to raid now.